Chapter 830. Most of the members of the Falling Moon Mansion were beautiful women. However, Long Yu knew that they were all beast cultivators. They belonged to the same clan as Yu Xinlan. Long Yu took a closer look at the head of the Falling Moon Mansion. Her human form was indeed beautiful, but unfortunately, Long Yu did not believe that she was sincere in surrendering. Since you've admitted to your crimes, then hand over all the cultivation resources of the Falling Moon Mansion to show your sincerity. Long Yu said indifferently. The mansion lord of the Falling Moon Mansion stood up after hearing this, but he was still hesitating. The cultivation resources of the Falling Moon Mansion were not small in number. If they were to hand over all of them to Long Yu, the strength of the Falling Moon Mansion would be greatly weakened. After the previous setback, the Falling Moon Mansion was already on the verge of collapse. If they were to suffer another setback, they might never rise again. It had to be known that this period of time was the best time for the various organizations in the North Snow Empire to rapidly develop. In just 2 or 3 years, the North Snow Empire would become the North Snow Empire, and the various organizations would basically be divided up. If they did not make use of these 2 years, the Falling Moon Mansion would lose its footing in the North Snow Empire. Since you refuse to hand it over, then die. The head of the Falling Moon Mansion didn't expect Long Yu to laugh softly when he saw her hesitation. He immediately unleashed the Absolute Space Domain and the 9 Serenities, Heavenly Light at the same time. Long Yu remembered that Yu Xinlan, who had died in the region of rubble, was the daughter of the head of the Falling Moon Mansion. There was no way he could trust the head of the Falling Moon Mansion under these circumstances. Not to mention that Long Yu had sensed a wisp of killing intent from deep within her eyes when he observed her eyes. It was this wisp of killing intent that made Long Yu decide to eliminate the root of the problem. The 9 Serenities' Heavenly Light instantly covered the entire area. 9 Serenities' blades immediately formed and slashed towards the Falling Moon Mansion. As for the head of the Falling Moon Mansion, who was in the middle stage of the Emperor Realm, Long Yu personally activated the Dragon Bone Burst. This terrifying move would deplete the power of the ancient Dragon Bone Tower. Just like the 9 Netherworld Barrier, it could only be used 5 times a day. Although there was a limit, it was still much more useful than before. Not only was its destructive prowess increased by several dozen times, but the ancient Dragon Bone Tower would also not automatically disintegrate due to the Dragon Bone Breaker. As Long Yu and the ancient Dragon Bone Pagoda were in perfect harmony, the consciousness within the ancient Dragon Bone Pagoda had become even more sensitive. With just a thought from Long Yu, the ancient Dragon Bone Pagoda would fly out on its own, spinning rapidly as it attacked the Manor Lord of the Falling Moon Manor. The Manor Head of Falling Moon Manor hadn't expected Long Yu to attack without warning. However, she was still a mid-Emperor Realm cultivator. The moment Long Yu made his move, she immediately condensed a layer of icy divine characters in front of her and formed an extremely thick wall of ice. The Dragon Bone Break arrived. The ice wall shattered. Immediately after, the Netherworld spirals bloomed beneath the Manor Head's feet, immobilizing her for a breath's time. It was this one breath's time that allowed Long Yu's attacks to arrive. Hand of 9 Netherworlds, Soul Seal Absorption, Dragon Breath of the 9 Netherworlds. What followed was a continuous barrage of Dragon Breath of the 9 Netherworlds. No matter what defensive methods the Manor Head used, she couldn't escape Long Yu's attacks. Her entire body was quickly corroded by the divine characters of the 9 Netherworlds. It's about time. Die. Long Yu raised his hand. The Void Nether Dragon Blade was like the scythe of the Grim Reaper. It turned into a sharp, pitch-black blade and pierced through space towards the Manor Head of Falling Moon Manor's heart. The Manor Mistress of Falling Moon Manor didn't even have time to transform before the Nether Void Dragon Blade pierced her heart 3 times in a row. The first 2 times, she used an ice wall to block it, but the 3rd time, she finally couldn't block it, and the Nether Void Dragon Blade directly pierced her heart. The Manor Head of Falling Moon Manor was dead. However, Long Yu discovered that after the manor head died, the void nether dragon blade that had pierced her heart had actually been completely sealed in ice. This was the manor head of Falling Moon Manor's origin power, Boundless Ice Seal. Long Yu didn't pay attention to it for now because he was in the middle of a fierce battle. Logically speaking, Falling Moon Manor should still have 2 Emperor Realm experts left. One is a mid-Emperor Realm Manor head, and the other is an initial Emperor Realm Elder. However, the Elder has disappeared. Long Yu frowned slightly, but didn't think too much about it. The Elder had probably left with some important figures of Falling Moon Manor before he arrived. It looked like the commotion caused by the annihilation of the Dragon Manor had been too great. The slightest disturbance had caused Falling Moon Manor to be prepared. This meant that Falling Moon Manor hadn't been completely eradicated. Since he'd made his move, Long Yu absolutely wouldn't let anyone from Falling Moon Manor go. He quickly cleaned up all the Yao cultivators in the entire Falling Moon Manor. Then, he formed 5 ancient shadows, each disguised as a small bird, and flew in all directions. Find the people of Falling Moon Manor and follow them. Long Yu gave the 5 ancient shadows an order, then left Falling Moon Manor and headed back to Shura Manor. The matter was almost settled. As for whether he could find the people of Falling Moon Manor, Long Yu wasn't worried. It had only been a short time since the Dragon Manor was annihilated. It was very likely that they hadn't left the North Snow Empire yet. Not everyone could master long-distance teleportation. It was impossible for Falling Moon Manor to have something like the Heaven and Earth Scroll used by the manor head of Falling Moon Manor. Of course, if he really couldn't find them, he could only forget about it. Long Yu knew that the people who escaped must have wanted to continue the bloodline of Falling Moon Manor and then try to take revenge. It was unlikely that they would appear in a short time. As long as he waited for a period of time, when the people of Heavenly Mandate Manor and Shura Manor had all grown stronger, there would be no need to be afraid of their revenge. Of course, it was naturally best to find them and eliminate them completely. With that in mind, Long Yu quickly returned to the Azura Manor. The news of the complete annihilation of the remaining forces of the Dragon Manor and Falling Moon Manor quickly spread throughout the North Snow Empire. At the same time, Long Yu's identity was also quickly exposed. He was the 7th direct disciple of the Red Emperor, the junior of Lady Yu Hanshin. Now that he had returned, he had completely wiped out the forces of the Dragon Manor and Falling Moon Manor that were a threat to Shura Manor and Heavenly Mandate Manor. He was extremely domineering. The Dragon Manor and Falling Moon Manor, as well as the Silver Fox King and the Silver Fox Emperor, were all annihilated by Long Yu in this battle. It was unbelievable. Not long ago, Long Yu was forced to admit defeat by Long Yao with great difficulty at the Imperial Capital's grand event. How long had it been since then? Long Yu could actually kill a middle-stage Emperor Realm expert. No wonder he was the direct disciple of the Red Emperor. In the past, there were some forces that wanted to deal with Heavenly Mandate Manor and Shura Manor. Now, they completely gave up on the idea. Originally, the Tianshu Qi channeling, an upper-grade desolate-level martial art technique, was very attractive to most forces. But now, Long Yu was the direct disciple of the Red Emperor. What was an upper-grade desolate-level martial art technique to him? If they were on good terms with Long Yu, they would probably be able to get an upper-grade desolate-level martial art technique if they wanted to. For a moment, countless people wanted to curry favor with Long Yu. However, when they arrived at Shura Manor, they found that Long Yu had already left. In fact, after annihilating Falling Moon Manor, Long Yu only returned to Shura Manor to explain the situation to everyone. Then, he flew back to Heavenly Mandate Manor with Shu Chan. This was because Shu Chan told Long Yu that the current situation in Heavenly Mandate Manor was not good. Because many of the core members of Heavenly Mandate Manor had gone out to train, there were not many people to manage it. Now, in Heavenly Mandate Manor, external forces were gradually gaining power. They seemed to be planning to snatch the cultivation jade scroll of the Tianshu channeling. For Long Yu, this was naturally unforgivable. So, he immediately flew back to Heavenly Mandate Manor with Shu Chan. The news of Long Yu's identity spread, but it was not as fast as Long Yu and Shu Chan. When the news that Long Yu was the seventh direct disciple of the Red Emperor reached Heavenly Mandate Manor, the two had already arrived in the sky above Heavenly Mandate Manor. At this time, Heavenly Mandate Manor was indeed in a mess, just as Shu Chan had said. In the center of Heavenly Mandate Manor, on the top floor of the cultivation tower, was the place where many desolate level martial art techniques were stored, including the Tianshu Qi channeling. At this moment there were two people guarding this place, Gui Xian and Eldarin. Gui Xian was a warrior at the later stage of the King Realm in the Cracked Tooth Squad, whom Long Yu had met in the Sky Tower. As for Eldarin, he had entered the King Realm because of Long Yu. Then, he came to Heavenly Mandate Manor according to Long Yu's instructions and worked for Long Yu. At this moment, Gui Xian and Eldarin were guarding the gate of the cultivation tower. Outside the cultivation tower, hundreds of martial arts practitioners had gathered. These people were shouting slogans, saying that they wanted them to hand over the cultivation jade scroll of the Tianshu Qi channeling. When Long Yu won first place in the Red Emperor's illusionary realm, Heavenly Mandate Manor became famous, attracting a large group of martial arts practitioners from Jianghu and from outside. Although Hong Yu was very strict in the beginning, there was still trouble in the end. Because the upper-grade desolate-level martial art techniques were too attractive to these martial arts practitioners from outside. Especially after some of the core members of Heavenly Mandate Manor went out to train, these martial arts practitioners from Jianghu and from outside became even more aggressive. Our Shura Manor received a message from Hong Yu, saying that the martial arts practitioners from outside were rioting and wanted us to help. We sent 12 people first, but we didn't expect that the 12 people would be killed by the remnants of the Dragon House and Luoyue House. Shu Chan said with an ice-cold voice. Naturally, she did not have any good impression of those foreign martial cultivators. Fortunately, Long Yu had returned. Furthermore, with an extremely domineering attitude, he destroyed the Dragon Mansion and the Falling Moon Mansion. This made Shu Chan feel relieved. With such a domineering Long Yu, Heavenly Mandate Manor and Shura Manor would definitely be fine. However, seeing that Long Yu had become so powerful, Shu Chan was certainly not convinced. She also wanted to go to the holy city of the Five Emperors and see how Long Yu could grow so fast. The center of the Xunwu world must have a lot of cultivation resources, right? They must be courting death. Long Yu came to the sky above Heavenly Mandate Manor. At a glance, he saw a chaotic scene. Since Long Yu had reinforced the buildings with divine rune crystals, the people in the Heavenly Mandate Manor were not harmed. The Azure Dragon Army, the Xuanwu Army, and the others that Long Yu had arranged were all hiding in the buildings. The Jianghu martial arts cultivators and foreign martial arts cultivators who came to cause trouble could not damage the buildings and hurt them. However, when Hong Yu asked everyone to hide for the sake of everyone's safety, the martial arts practitioners from Jianghu and from outside became even more aggressive. They gathered together, trying to break into the cultivation tower and directly snatch the cultivation jade scroll of Dubhe Qi channeling. These people obviously wanted to leave with the jade scroll after they succeeded. By then, no matter if Yu Hanxin or Long Yu came back, they wouldn't be able to find them. Chapter 831. None of the martial arts practitioners who were making trouble in the Heavenly Mandate Manor knew that Long Yu had returned. In fact, these people would not be afraid even if they saw Long Yu before they got the news of what had happened in the North Snow Imperial City. On the surface, Long Yu was only in the middle stage of the King Realm. Although the speed of his progress was amazing, it was still nothing for them. In the entire Heavenly Mandate Manor, there were more than 300 martial arts practitioners from Jianghu and foreign martial arts practitioners who joined after Long Yu left. At first, these people obeyed the rules set by Hong Yu, but then they found that according to Hong Yu's rules, it would take at least several years for them to get an upper-grade desolate level martial arts skill. So, these people could not wait any longer. They were making trouble at the same time. Because there were more than a dozen warriors in the secret realm of the King Realm, Hong Yu and the others certainly could not resist them. When these people joined forces to make trouble, only Gu Yixian could stop them. In the crowd, there were 13 warriors in the King Realm, including 1 in the late stage, 3 in the middle stage, and 9 in the early stage. Their overall strength was far beyond the original strength of the Heavenly Mandate Manor. The warrior in the late stage of the King Realm, together with another warrior in the middle stage of the King Realm, led 150 people in front of the cultivation tower, confronting Gu Yixian. Gu Yixian, I respect you for being a man. Now get out of my way, or we will all fight. The middle-aged man in the late stage of the King Realm threatened Gu Yixian. As he said this, more than 100 people behind him shouted with great momentum. Unfortunately, Gu Yixian was not moved at all. He just stood at the door of the cultivation tower, holding an upper-grade desolate level sword in his hand, indifferently. As long as these people really dared to attack the cultivation tower, he did not mind killing them all. It seems that he is unrepentant. It doesn't matter. When the third and the fourth come back, we can do it. The middle-aged man in the late stage of the King Realm said lightly. Obviously, for the time being, he did not dare to rush to fight Gu Yixian. He was waiting for the other 2 in the middle stage of the King Realm to come. In that case, the 4 of them would be able to deal with Gu Yixian. As for now, the third and the fourth were leading the team to capture Hong Yu and the others, constantly bombarding the buildings in the Heavenly Mandate Manor. Unfortunately, Long Yu had reinforced the building with divine runic crystals. How could they possibly break through it? You are too bold. The Heavenly Mandate Manor tried to recruit you and provided you with a lot of cultivation resources. I didn't expect you to betray us for a martial arts technique. You are really heartless. Beside Gu Yixian, Eldarin, who'd been invited over by Long Yu, glared at the cultivators in front of him with hatred. Unfortunately, he'd just stepped into the early stage of the King Realm not too long ago, and his inner world hadn't expanded yet. It was utterly impossible for him to be a match for these people. Humph, we risked our lives for the Heavenly Mandate Manor and carried out many missions, but the contribution points we received were only a fraction of that top-grade Great Desolation level martial arts technique. The middle-aged man at the advanced stage of the King Realm grunted coldly and said, "Since the people in the manor don't trust us, then we'll take the initiative to take it. Let me see what you're relying on to stop us. I Long Yu am back." At this moment, Long Yu's voice suddenly fell from the sky and came into the ears of everyone present. Eldarin suddenly looked excited. He and Gu Yixian raised their heads together and saw Long Yu and Shu Chan descending from the sky and arriving in front of the cultivation tower. "It's you, Long Yu? Shu Chan?" The middle-aged man at the advanced stage of the King Realm frowned slightly when he saw this. Wasn't it said that the people of the Dragon House and the Luiyue House had completely surrounded the Shura Manor? How could Shu Chan still come out? Moreover, after a few months, Long Yu had reappeared in the middle stage of the King Realm, which was really surprising. However, he was only at the middle stage of the King Realm. A boy at the middle stage of the King Realm dares to stop me. You're really reckless. I'll kill you first. The middle-aged man at the advanced stage of the King Realm, the leader of the martial cultivators, didn't take Long Yu seriously at all. As for Shu Chan, who was at the 7 Divine Realm, he didn't take her seriously at all. As soon as he finished speaking, the middle-aged man's figure flashed. He had actually comprehended the energy of the divine scriptures of space, and he condensed a spatial blade that tore through space and attacked Long Yu's face. "Young Master Long, watch out!" Eldarin hurriedly warned from below. Gu Yixian's eyes lit up, and he wasn't worried about Long Yu. Gu Yixian was very clear that Long Yu, who was at the Four Divine Realm, was able to go against an early-stage King Realm expert. Now that Long Yu had stepped into the middle stage of the King Realm, how could a late-stage King Realm expert compare to him? As expected, the next scene instantly threw the hearts of everyone in the surroundings into chaos. Stop! Spiral runes! Long Yu raised his hand, and the spiral runes of the 7th grade divine chain bloomed beneath the middle-aged man and completely restrained him. Power of the origin, break! A large axe condensed from the divine scriptures of space bloomed from the middle-aged man's body, instantly splitting the spiral runes. However, before he could completely break free, Long Yu's attack came again. Dragon Breath of the 9 Underworlds. Spiral runes. Dragon Breath of the 9 Underworlds. Just the continuous circulation of these two moves completely trapped the middle-aged man. His physical body was constantly being destroyed and eroded by the Dragon Breath of the 9 Underworld. After the third Dragon Breath of the 9 Underworlds, the middle-aged man's entire body was roasted black, and he fell straight onto the snowy ground of the Heavenly Mandate Manor, without a sound. The leader of the rebel army was dead. Run! When the remaining martial cultivators of the Jianghu saw this scene, they immediately panicked, and hundreds of them scattered in all directions. The leader of the late-stage King Realm expert was dead, and the rest of them had no chance of obtaining the upper-grade Desolation level martial arts technique. Therefore, they fled in all directions at once. Unfortunately, how could Long Yu let them escape? Ancient Dragon Bone Tower, Absolute Space Field. Long Yu raised his hand and directly released the ancient Dragon Bone Tower. A wave of ancient, pitch-black light flashed in all directions, and then an absolute space field enveloped the entire space. Those people fled in all directions. When they had fled thousands of feet away, they suddenly found that there was a space barrier in front of them that was invisible to the naked eye, preventing them from escaping. No matter what method they used, they could not break this space barrier. Die! Long Yu ordered, and together with Gu Yixian, he chased in two directions, killing one martial cultivator of the Jianghu after another in an instant. Countless people began to kneel and beg for mercy, but how could Long Yu forgive these rebellious fellows? He held the nether dragon blade in his hand and continuously reaped the lives of those people. It only took half an hour for more than 300 rebels within the Heavenly Mandate Manor to die in the hands of Long Yu and Gu Yixian. Not a single one was spared. The entire Heavenly Mandate Manor, like the Dragon House and the Luoyue House, was bathed in blood. Blood was everywhere, dyeing the snow-covered land of the manor red. When the rebels were all killed, Hong Yu led the others in the Heavenly Mandate Manor away from the buildings where they were hiding. They all looked at the scene in shock. Long Yu had returned, and as soon as he returned, he had already stepped into the secret zone of the royal path. With a wave of his hand, he killed all the martial cultivators who were causing trouble, and once again saved everyone in the Heavenly Mandate Manor. Hong Yu, the manor manager, Qi Yun, the master of the weapon refining pavilion, and Zi Ling, the master of the alchemy hall, stood in front of Long Yu, listening to Long Yu's orders. At this time, Long Yu had a puzzled look on his face. Are you saying that the leaders of the entire Heavenly Mandate Manor, the Xuanwu Army, the Azure Dragon Army, the White Tiger Army, and the Death Army have all left the manor to train? This time, Long Yu originally wanted to find some people to go to the sacred city of the 5 emperors with him, so that they could enjoy a better cultivation matrix. However, he found that most of the people he wanted to find had gone out to train, which was far beyond his expectations. Man Xian, Fengyu Xian, Qihua, Yiluan, Lu Yuan, Yan Huan, Mo and so on. Many people that Long Yu was familiar with had all gone out to train, trying to find their own path of martial arts. In this regard, there was nothing Long Yu could do. Even Hong Yu didn't know where these people had gone to train. Unless they came back on their own, it was impossible to find them. If Long Yu had a cultivator of the Emperor realm with him, he could calculate the current location of these people. Unfortunately, Long Yu didn't have the help of a cultivator of the Emperor realm. If that's the case, we can only choose some other people to go with us. Long Yu shook his head helplessly, then named a few people. In the current Death Army, Shi Yenwu is still here. Let her go to the sacred city of the 5 emperors first, and bring along 7 other members of the Death Army with her. Every member of the Death Legion had comprehended the divine rune of death. Long Yu had heard from the Death Envoy that if there were 8 people who had comprehended the divine rune of death, they would be able to form a formation called Death Binding Seal Formation. Even if there were 8 King Realm cultivators using it, they would be able to trap an early-stage emperor. If 8 Emperor Realm cultivators were to cast the Dead Binding Seal Matrix together, they would be able to trap everyone in Shen Wu world. Since Man Xin, Qihua, Feng Yu Xin, and the others weren't here, Long Yu had to find someone else. Apparently, Shi Yenwu had been cultivating quite well recently in the Death Army, so she was chosen to be the leader of the Dead Binding Seal Matrix. When Long Yu saw Shi Yenwu, he found that the little girl of the past had grown quite a bit, and now had 3 Thaumaturgy realm cultivation. This speed was already quite unbelievable. Xiao Wu, take this badge and use the warp portal inside the North Snow Palace to lead the 7 members of the Death Army to the Sacred Tower at the center of the 5 emperors. Then tell them that you're looking for Qin Yishuang. She will arrange for you to go to the Star Spirit Matrix to cultivate. Before I return, just focus on your cultivation, Long Yu told Shi Yenwu. Can I bring Grandpa with me? Shi Yenwu was a bit nervous as she asked. Seeing Long Yu again, she felt that Long Yu was different from before. After all, he was now a King Realm cultivator, so she was a bit reserved when she spoke. Of course. You can bring whoever you want, but I need the 8 of you to quickly cultivate in the Star Spirit Matrix, understand? Chapter 832. After listening to Long Yu's words, Shi Yenwu left happily to choose her people. She had been cultivating with the Death Army recently, so she was very familiar with them. It was not difficult to choose 7 of them to go with her to the sacred city of the 5 emperors. In addition, she also wanted to take her grandfather, Pine Crane, with her. Pine Crane was now working in the Alchemy Hall, but in fact, his alchemy level was nothing in the Alchemy Hall. In the Alchemy Hall of the Heavenly Mandate Manor, Liao Leilei's talent was extremely outstanding. She learned alchemy from Master Bai in the Zhentian clan, and after coming to the Heavenly Mandate Manor, she improved rapidly under Zi Ling's guidance. Now Liao Leilei had just reached the divinity realm and could already refine heaven-level upper-grade elixirs. As long as her cultivation improved further, she could refine great desolate level lower-grade elixirs. Over at the weapon crafting pavilion, Lu Guanming was improving at a godly speed. He had never learned weapon crafting before, but after coming to the North Snow Empire, he had learned a lot from Qi Yun and Huiyuanbai. His martial realm was 1 level higher than Liao Leilei's, reaching the second path transcendent realm. As long as he had enough materials, he would be able to craft a high-ranked heaven-grade combat weapon. Similarly, he was still a little short of great desolate level lower-grade weapons. Whether it was great desolate level weapons or elixirs, to refine them, one had to at least have the cultivation of the 4 divinity realm. But with enough cultivation resources, it should be fast for the 2 of them. Long Yu called Hong Yu and Shu Chan over and made arrangements with them. He took out half of the assets from the Dark Shadow Pavilion given to him by Tianxiang Emperor and gave it to Hong Yu and Shu Chan, about half each. These cultivation resources are worth nearly 50 million Shinbi. You can each take half. Strive to make the Heavenly Mandate Manor and Shura Manor develop faster. With so many resources taken out, both Hong Yu and Shu Chan were stunned. Cultivation resources worth 50 million Shinbi. It should be noted that both the Heavenly Mandate Manor and Shura Manor only earned about 10 to 20,000 Shinbi every month, and they had to work hard to get it. But now, Long Yu had given them 50 million Shinbi worth of cultivation resources in one go. Even Shu Chan had to admit that Long Yu had surpassed her. All of this seemed to be because he went to the holy city of the 5 emperors? Looks like I have to make a trip to the holy city of the 5 emperors. Shu Chan thought about it and directly brought it up to Long Yu. If you want to go to the holy city of the 5 emperors, then go with Shi Yengu and the others to the dragon domain that leads to the holy tower. That's where I belong. Long Yu nodded. As he was making arrangements, Long Yu suddenly frowned. He sensed that one of the primordial shadows he sent out had finally found the remaining early-stage Emperor Realm Elder of Luoyue Manor. At this moment, the early-stage Emperor Realm Elder of Luoyue Manor was fleeing to the outskirts of North Snow Imperial City with a mid-stage King Realm girl. They met a young man in a dense forest. Long Yu knew the young man. He was the second son of the Emperor Realm Expert from the Clouds Empire, Yun Chu Shui. Yun Chu Shui, mid-stage Emperor Realm. His strength should be slightly stronger than the Master of Longqing Manor and the Master of Luoyue Manor. But it doesn't matter. He can only die in front of me. Long Yu thought to himself. He bid farewell to Hong Yu and Shu Chan and prepared to kill Yun Chu Shui and the remaining members of Luoyue Manor. If one didn't eliminate the roots, the threat would be great. Therefore, even if the Luoyue Manor only had one girl and the elder left, Long Yu wouldn't let any of them go. Long Yu wasn't worried that Yun Chu Shui and the others would escape. His primordial shadows had detected that Yun Chu Shui was heading straight for Heavenly Mandate Manor with the Luoyue Manor girl and the elder. It seemed that they wanted Yun Chu Shui to kill Long Yu and avenge the Luoyue Manor. The two would have to fight eventually. Naturally, Long Yu wouldn't run away. Instead, he went to meet them. In another 30 minutes, the two would meet above a river outside of Heavenly Mandate Manor. There was one thing that was rather interesting. Long Yu's primordial shadows had detected that the Luoyue Manor couple didn't want to deal with Long Yu. That was because Long Yu had even killed their mid-stage Emperor Realm Master. Why would he be afraid of Yun Chu Shui? However, Yun Chu Shui said that his strength was stronger than ordinary mid-stage Emperor Realm cultivators. At the very least, he could fight against a late-stage Emperor Realm cultivator. Therefore, they didn't have to worry. The Luoyue Manor couple could only follow behind because they could only rely on Yun Chu Shui now. They even paid the price of marrying the girl to Yun Chu Shui. Once he was within 100 miles, Long Yu immediately opened his eyes of shadow and observed the entire situation within 100 miles. Naturally, he also completely grasped the whereabouts of Yun Chu Shui and the two women from the Falling Moon Mansion. He flew directly in the direction of the three, alone. Almost there. 4 cultivators at the level of Long Yu and Yun Chu Shui, 100 miles was just a few dozen breaths distance. Long Yu could detect Yun Chu Shui, and Yun Chu Shui could detect Long Yu's position. The two were approaching each other rapidly. At first, my father warned me that Long Yu has already become the Red Emperor's personal disciple. He told me not to provoke him and even to let go of my younger brother's vengeance, but I just can't let go. Yun Chu Shui's eyes were filled with endless coldness. He said to the Falling Moon Mansion's elder and young woman, not to mention, he has now exterminated my fiancé's clan. I, Yun Chu Shui, will definitely kill Long Yu. I hope so. I will help you at the critical moment. The Luoyue Manor's Emperor Realm Elder, the old woman, said indifferently. However, a shadow flashed above her head at this moment and turned into a sharp, pitch-black blade that slashed horizontally towards her neck. What? This scene was immediately noticed by Yun Chu Shui and greatly shocked him. In his perception, wasn't Long Yu still more than 5 miles away? Why was someone launching a sneak attack now? Moreover, this Long Yu had launched a sneak attack without saying a word. His methods were truly ruthless. The old woman of the Luoyue Mansion didn't panic at all when she was ambushed. She simply raised her hand, and ice divine glyphs bloomed all over her body. An ice lotus enveloped her. The pitch-black blade directly destroyed the ice lotus, but it didn't harm the old woman at all. Without a sound, Long Yu's attack came again. This time, it was the nine hells' heavenly light that filled the sky. It instantly enveloped an area of more than 5 kilometers above the river. What the hell is this? Purify! Yun Chushui shouted harshly as a burst of light divine characters erupted from his hand. It was as if a small sun had been born in midair and actually dispersed the nine hells' heavenly light that filled the sky. As expected of a middle-stage Emperor Realm cultivator, Long Yu's first wave of sneak attacks didn't work, but he wasn't in a hurry. It wasn't like he hadn't killed a middle-stage Emperor Realm cultivator before. For the current him, as long as he acted carefully, it wouldn't be difficult at all. Fallen dark stars condensed one after another above the river, but Yun Chushui and the others still couldn't find Long Yu's figure. Yun Chushui and Long Yu entered battle mode. As for the old woman of Luoyue Manor, she was carefully protecting the young girl from Luoyue Manor. She didn't dare to approach Yun Chushui, but she didn't dare to go too far either. This was because they knew very well that Long Yu's methods were extremely vicious. They absolutely couldn't be left alone. Very soon, the fallen dark stars exploded one after another when they approached Yun Chushui. However, Yun Chushui snorted coldly and raised his hand. Fire divine characters burst forth and formed a wall of fire that blocked all the explosive power of the fallen dark stars. Light, fire, the power of two divine characters, Long Yu turned into a shadow and hid in the dense forest at the side, carefully observing Yun Chushui's fighting style. He quickly discovered that it wouldn't be as easy to deal with Yun Chushui as before. This was because Yun Chushui's basic strength far surpassed that of the Silver Fox Emperor and Luoyue Manor's lord from before. If Long Yu bombarded it with his control methods, it would definitely be blocked. In this way, an attack like the Nine Underworld's Dragon Breath wouldn't be able to hit Yun Chushui at all. Who do you think you are, hiding your head and showing your tail? Come out, Angel Doppelganger! Yun Chushui took 2 of Long Yu's attacks, but couldn't find Long Yu's whereabouts. He immediately became incomparably angry, and light divine characters blossomed from his body like the sun. 12 winged angel figures condensed around his body. Each of the 12 angel figures looked like Yun Chushui himself, but they were completely formed from light divine characters. Illuminate the heavens! Yun Chushui shouted, and the 12 angel figures immediately blossomed with boundless radiance, causing all the shadows within a radius of several dozen kilometers to dissipate without a trace. Long Yu reacted quickly and directly disguised himself as a small fish in the river. However, at the same time, 12 black shadows gradually condensed above the river. Each black shadow held a pitch-black scimitar in its hand. This was Long Yu's 6th divine ability, 9 Nether Hunter Summon. When he stepped into the mid-stage King Realm, he could use any method at will, and he could even summon 12 9 Nether Hunters at once. Unfortunately, this summon consumed all the energy in Long Yu's body. After he disguised himself as a small fish, he began to consume the Shadow Beast crystal in the Book of Shadows and began to recover his strength. The 12 9 Nether Hunters each searched for an opponent and attacked the 12 Angel Doppelganger in the sky. Boundless radiance illuminated the earth. The Light Angels and the 9 Nether Hunters were like natural enemies, and the two sides quickly became entangled in battle. The strength of each Angel Doppelganger and the 9 Nether Hunters was actually about the same. They are merely mid-stage King Realm kings. How is this possible? Yun Chushui was incomparably amazed by the combat strength of these 9 Nether Hunters, but what he really cared about wasn't this. Instead, he was actually still unable to find traces of Long Yu. He had even used the Angel Doppelganger and illuminate the heavens. Logically speaking, no matter where Long Yu was hiding, he should be able to find him easily. All the shadows within a radius of several dozen kilometers had been forcefully dispersed, and Yun Chushui knew everything within the range like the back of his hand. However, He just couldn't see Long Yu's figure. Of course, he sensed the small fish in the river, but he didn't consider that it would be Long Yu. Even if he did, which one of the tens of thousands of small fish in the river was Long Yu? Yun Chushui was at a loss. Chapter 833. Now that Long Yu had stepped into the middle stage of the King realm, he could continuously use any kind of magical martial technique, and his fighting style would become extremely flexible. Right now, he had thought of a way to trap anyone. Infinite imprisonment. With a thought, Long Yu rushed up from the river, and endless netherworld divine characters condensed in midair. Yun Chushui reacted immediately and wanted to attack Long Yu, but how could he be faster than Long Yu? One after another, dark celestial bodies condensed around Yun Chushui's body. Dark star confinement, dark star confinement, dark star confinement. More than 10 dark celestial bodies appeared around Yun Chushui's body, firmly surrounding him within. This move was called infinite imprisonment by Long Yu. If there was only one dark star imprisonment, Yun Chushui would probably be destroyed in an instant. However, now the dark star imprisonment had increased to 12 layers. It was easy to break a chopstick, but when 12 chopsticks were combined, the power needed to break them was difficult to estimate. The dark star imprisonment was similar. Long Yu directly stacked the 12 dark stars together, and the thickness directly increased by 12 times. To break it, the power needed to break it was far more than the power needed to break a dark star imprisonment by 12 times, or even hundreds of times. Even if Yun Chushui wanted to break through such infinite imprisonment, he could not do it in one go. He needed at least 3 breaths of time. And 3 breaths of time was the time that Long Yu used to prepare to kill Yun Chushui. The layers of dark stars completely darkened the entire space, and the 12 angel avatars were firmly held back by the 12 netherworld hunters, unable to attack Long Yu at all. Seeing this from afar, the old woman from Luoyue Mansion immediately knew that the battle between the two had reached a critical moment. If she did not make a move, Yun Chushui was very likely to be killed by Long Yu. This boy is too terrifying, he must be killed. Luoyue Mansion's old woman's eyes flashed with hatred, and her whole body turned into a stream of light. Countless ice sword chi fell from the sky, quickly condensing into a giant ice sword, and fell towards Long Yu's head. Too slow. The corner of Long Yu's mouth curled slightly, and he did not pay any attention to the giant ice sword. His whole body instantly disappeared, and he used shadow evasion to move hundreds of meters in an instant. Immediately afterward, 6 ancient shadows were condensed by Long Yu, and each shadow began to condense fallen dark stars at the fastest speed. In a breath of time, a total of nearly 200 fallen dark stars were produced, and they surrounded the infinite imprisonment Yun Chushui. 1,000 miles of ice. The setting moon mansion's old woman saw how agile Long Yu was. His entire body erupted with the combined power of space divine runes and ice divine runes. He actually wanted to freeze the entire surrounding space. Long Yu did not dare to ignore such a large-scale attack, and he turned around and spat out a dragon breath of the 9 underworlds, directly opening a path through the 1,000 miles of ice. The space around Long Yu all turned into ice, but the place where he was burned by the dragon breath of the 9 underworlds, and it was not frozen. It was also at this moment that the giant ice sword from before actually began to rapidly advance through the frozen space, stabbing towards Long Yu. It was icy cold, and its might was astonishing. Dragon breath of the 9 underworlds, break for me. Long Yu once again spat out a mouthful of 9 underworlds dragon breath, directly blocking the gigantic ice sword. And at this moment, the boundless imprisonment finally lasted for 3 breaths of time. After that, it was unable to withstand the bombardment of Yun Chushui's attack, and with a loud bang, it shattered. However, Long Yu's 6 ancient shadows had condensed more than 500 fallen dark stars during this time, and they gathered around Yun Chushui. Yun Chushui had just broken through the infinite imprisonment, and before she had time to react, the more than 500 fallen dark stars exploded, and the terrifying power even spread to the frozen space around Long Yu, completely destroying the ice in the space. In the face of such power, Long Yu, who was within 100 zhang of him, had no choice but to dodge. He unleashed the Merak star shadow, leaving behind an afterimage of a star. At the same time, his body had already moved 100 zhang away. Furthermore, he was fleeing at an extremely fast speed. Long Yu was very clear about the explosive power of 500 fallen dark stars, especially now that he had stepped into the middle stage of the King Realm. If he did not run far away, even he would be affected, and even if he did not die, he would be seriously injured. Compared to Long Yu, the old woman from Falling Moon Mansion was not so lucky. She still wanted to kill Long Yu as soon as possible, and when she saw Long Yu's Merak star shadow, she thought it was Long Yu's real body, and launched another attack. Unfortunately, when she found that the Long Yu was just an afterimage, it was already too late for her to run. The explosive power of more than 500 fallen dark stars not only completely enveloped Yun Chushui, but also the old woman from Falling Moon Mansion, who was surrounded by the explosion of the pitch-black ninth nether divine characters. Not far away, when the young woman from Falling Moon Mansion saw this situation, she knew that the situation was not good, and hurriedly displayed a movement martial skill, turned around, and fled. However, very soon, Long Yu just happened to catch up at this moment. Cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. He could not let any of them go. In particular, this young woman from Falling Moon Mansion was quite talented, so of course, Long Yu could not let her escape safely. The explosion of the fallen dark stars directly blew up all 12 angel avatars present, and even the 9th nether hunters were not spared, and the surrounding dozens of kilometers were once again covered in shadows. The shadows of the trees and the towering mountains all became Long Yu's best assassination tools. Shadow kill art. As the young woman from Falling Moon Mansion turned around to escape, many shadows suddenly condensed into sharp blades, stabbing towards the young woman. The young woman from Falling Moon Mansion was so frightened that her beautiful face paled, and she hurriedly raised her hands, flames in her left hand and ice in her right. The power of the two divine characters swept out at the same time, condensing into 2 layers of barriers, trying to resist Long Yu's shadow kill art attack. However, now that she was in the same martial Dao realm as Long Yu and had the same basic strength, she was completely inferior to Long Yu in all other aspects, so how could she escape from Long Yu's pursuit? As the Nether Void Dragon Blade turned into a pitch-black sharp blade, it pierced through the 2 layers of defense, and the young woman's heart was directly pierced. She stopped breathing and slowly fell to the ground. At this point, the 3 people who wanted to deal with Long Yu were all dead. Long Yu, on the other hand, had only used up 10 shadow attribute beast crystals. Long Yu discovered that although the power of his martial arts and combat arts could be mentioned in the same breath as a middle-stage Emperor Realm expert, the power contained within his body was much weaker in comparison. In a single battle, Long Yu had actually absorbed 10 shadow-attributed exotic beast crystals. In other words, the energy in his body had been exhausted more than 5 times. If it wasn't for the fact that he had enough beast crystals, he would have died of exhaustion a long time ago. However, as long as Long Yu had enough beast crystals, he would be able to fight against a middle-stage Emperor Realm expert. That was an entire realm above him. There's still a long way to go before I reach the late-stage King Realm. I'm currently in the middle stage, so my inner world is 50 kilometers wide. Only by expanding my inner world to 10,000 kilometers will I be able to endure the process of merging with my true spirit and giving birth to origin power. Long Yu thought to himself. To put it simply, the amount of spirit energy needed to reach the late stage of the King Realm was 1,000,000 times more than the amount needed to reach the middle stage from the early stage. The larger the inner world, the more spirit energy needed to expand by 1 kilometer. The total amount of spirit energy needed to expand from 100 kilometers to 10,000 kilometers was 1,000,000 times the amount needed to expand from 1 kilometer to 100 kilometers. This was calculated based on the volume of the inner world. Correspondingly, Long Yu discovered that all of his meridians had been tempered to an extremely high level after he reached the middle stage of the King realm. This included every other aspect of his physical body. His basic cultivation speed had increased by more than 100 times compared to before. If the star-soul array was taken into account, Long Yu would only need to cultivate in the star-soul array for a day, and it would be equivalent to consuming a desolate-grade high-grade pill. Concentrating on cultivation is too slow for me. Although a day is equivalent to consuming an upper-grade great desolate rank pill, cultivating for a year is equivalent to consuming 3 different mid-grade ancient rank pills. It's not even comparable to absorbing an Emperor Realm special crystal. Long Yu shook his head. If he wanted to cultivate faster than others, he absolutely couldn't rely on concentrating on cultivation. He had to purchase more cultivation resources. The most important thing was beast crystals. Be it King Realm or Emperor Realm beast crystals, they could greatly increase his cultivation speed. After a rough calculation, Long Yu needed 100 Emperor Realm special crystals if he wanted to break through to the late stage of the King Realm in a short time. This was probably the result of 100 years of cultivation inside the Star Spirit formation. It was easy to imagine how difficult it was to break through in the King Realm. Just like Yu Hanshin, Black Blade and Yi Ziwei must have had an extraordinary fortuitous encounter to break through to late Emperor Realm at such a young age. The Envoy of Death once said that in the Shen Wu world, Jiuyou Dragon Emperor's miniature world, there were many supreme rank and supreme rank pills stored in the ruins. If one could obtain them, it would be extremely easy to make a leap in the martial realm. For example, a single heavenly demon pill allowed Long Yu to go from the early stage to the mid-stage of the King realm. If he had a top-grade ancient rank pill, just one would be enough to have the gap between Long Yu and the late stage of the King realm. I hope there are some pills useful to me in the ancient ruins, Long Yu thought to himself. Then, he burned the body of the fallen Moon Manor girl and left. As for Yun Chu Shui and the old woman of the fallen Moon Manor, they were blasted into nothingness by the 500 fallen dark stars. Not even a trace of them was left. The extermination plan was basically over. Next, Long Yu had to go explore the ancient ruins in the Shen Luo Empire. Because the Envoy of Death had told him about it, Long Yu was quite familiar with the ancient ruins, the so-called small world remains of the Sufferers. He knew where to enter and roughly what was inside. Chapter 834. After Long Yu returned to the Heavenly Mandate Manor, he sent Shi Yengu, the 7 members of the Death Legion, Shi He, Shi Lao, and Shu Chan to the North Snow Imperial Palace. Then, he rushed to the Shenluo Empire alone. So far, the person that Long Yu trusted the most was Shu Chan. After all, Shu Chan knew many of his secrets. Even the Azura Ancient Palace was owned by him. Therefore, when Shu Chan went to the holy city of the 5 emperors, Long Yu wanted her to enter the 5 emperors' illusory realm. In the North Snow Empire's Red Emperor's illusory realm battle, the Red Emperor must have noticed Shu Chan. Maybe without Long Yu saying anything, he would give her a place to enter the 5 emperors' illusory realm. For this, Long Yu could only deal with it after he came out of the ancient relic. Now, he must focus all his attention on the ancient relic. While Long Yu was rushing to the Shenluo Empire, the emperors of the Cloud Empire and the Shenluo Empire began to deduce Long Yu's whereabouts. For Emperor Yundan, the deaths of his 2 sons were related to Long Yu. Of course, he would not let Long Yu go. As for the people of the Shenluo Empire, there were spies in the North Snow Empire. Since there were spies, they must have received the news of Long Yu's return. Therefore, Situliuli, the daughter of the city lord of the city of Desolate God, asked her father to deduce Long Yu's whereabouts. Long Yu took 3 desolate grade elixirs from the general's mansion, which made Situ Liuli suffer a great loss. She would probably never forget the humiliation that Long Yu brought to her that day. This was the first time she had suffered a setback since she came to this world. Naturally, Long Yu had left a deep impression on her. Emperor Realm experts were almost never wrong in their deductions of low-level martial practitioners. Soon, Long Yu's movements were clearly displayed in front of the Emperor Realm experts. Some of the stronger martial emperors even managed to deduce Long Yu's destination, somewhere in the Shenluo Empire. As a result, a large group of experts embarked on a journey to kill Long Yu. However, not a single person dared to step into the territory of the North Snow Empire to cause trouble. After all, everyone knew that Yu Hanxin was the ruler of the North Snow Empire, and she was the 6th direct disciple of the Red Emperor. Of course, to be honest, they were afraid of Yu Hanxin because they couldn't beat Yu Hanxin. As for Long Yu, he was only in the intermediate stage of the King Realm. As long as they sent someone to kill him, would the Red Emperor slaughter them all in a fit of anger? When the Red Emperor asked, they could directly say that they didn't know Long Yu's identity. What else could the Red Emperor do? Moreover, there were many precedents of the direct disciples of the 5 emperors being killed when they were training outside. The 5 emperors had never been angered by such a matter. The direct disciples of the 5 emperors were killed while they were out adventuring. This in itself was a kind of humiliation. If the 5 emperors were to care about this kind of thing, how could their direct disciples truly grow? Long Yu spent 3 days and arrived at the border between the North Snow Empire and the Shenluo Empire. Then, he disguised himself as a crow and flew leisurely in the sky. During this period, Long Yu sensed that many people were waiting at the border of the Shenluo Empire. They were obviously waiting to kill him. Unfortunately, no one knew that he had transformed into a crow. When Long Yu flew thousands of miles at his fastest speed, half a day had passed. Finally, a large group of people chased after this crow. There was no other reason. The Emperor Realm Powerhouse had finally divined that Long Yu was in the vicinity, but he couldn't figure out where exactly Long Yu was. In the end, there were still people who suspected this crow. However, just as that person was about to kill the crow, Long Yu's body transformed and rapidly rose high into the sky, turning into a speck of dust. Not only that, he also formed 6 ancient shadows and made these ancient shadows all disguise as crows. They flew in all directions and attracted the attention of a large group of people. The speck of dust that Long Yu had transformed into was blown forward by the strong winds in the sky. Although its speed was slow, it was still able to quickly leave this area. He once again slipped away from the eyes of the pursuers. By the time the emperors deduced his location again, he had already flown thousands of miles away. Just like that, Long Yu relied on the Book of Shadows to disguise himself and move forward. He would sometimes turn into a bird, sometimes into a fish, and he would swim along the river. Day after day, 3 days passed. He was already not far from his destination, the ancient ruins. The emperors had deduced his location 6 times, but none of them were able to catch him. However, after these 6 deductions, everyone understood the trick to Long Yu's evasion: disguise himself as something else to confuse the public. Although they didn't know how Long Yu did it, they firmly believed that if this continued, they would be able to capture Long Yu in less than 2 days. There were even 2 martial emperors who had personally arrived at Long Yu's destination that they had deduced and were prepared to wait for him. Another day passed, and Long Yu arrived in the sky above an extremely barren swamp. The entrance to the ancient ruins mentioned by the Envoy of Death was located here, underneath a 10,000-year-old quagmire. Upon arriving here, Long Yu sensed that he wasn't far from the ancient ruins. He immediately transformed into a small snake and burrowed into the ground beneath the quagmire. This kind of small snake was a race of demonic beasts that had lived in this swamp for generations. They were extremely powerful to be able to traverse the swamp as if it was flat ground. Long Yu's speed was even faster than when he was flying in the sky. When Long Yu transformed into a small snake and burrowed into the swamp, many pursuers finally arrived. "Where's that kid? I wonder what he's disguised himself as this time. Everyone, be careful, no matter what tries to fly away, shoot it down. Don't let even a fly escape. It seems like that kid's destination is this swamp. Should we go down and search? There might be some treasures in this swamp. You and you, follow me down. Let's see if we can find anything." Even the two emperors arrived at this place. They looked at the large swamp with furrowed brows. One of the experts was a late-stage emperor. He wasn't from the Shunluo Empire, but his divination ability was the strongest among them. All the experts from the Shunluo Empire were extremely respectful towards this old man. This old man was an imperial elder from the Taiwu Empire, one of the 6 sects and 10 countries near the holy city of the 5 emperors. The Taiwu Empire was undoubtedly a colossus compared to the Shunluo Empire. Any imperial elder who came would be welcomed by the entire Shunluo Empire. One had to know that there were no late-stage emperors in the entire Shunluo Empire. At most, there were only mid-stage emperors. This was why they were afraid of Yu Hanxin. Even the strongest expert in the Shunluo Empire couldn't defeat Yu Hanxin, who was only a late-stage emperor. But because of this, Long Yu thought of the Tianqin Empire. A long time ago, the Tianqin Emperor had fought with Yu Hanxin. Although he was seriously injured by Yu Hanxin, it was still not easy for him to survive under Yu Hanxin's attack. This was also why Long Yu hadn't gone to the Tianqin Empire yet. Otherwise, he would have gone to the Tianqin Empire to avenge the King of Shura and the King of Shadows. He would also have taken down the Tianqin Empire along the way. That way, he would have enough cultivation resources. The people of the Heavenly Mandate Manor and Shura Manor wouldn't have to worry about not having a place to train. The Tianqin Empire wasn't much smaller than the North Snow Empire. As long as Long Yu had the confidence to defeat the Tianqin Emperor, he would immediately kill him and occupy the Tianqin Empire. But now wasn't the time. Soon, the late-stage Emperor Realm Elder from the Taiwu Empire finished his divination and said, "I've divined for 3 days and 3 nights, and I've finally found his final destination. Everyone, please follow me." And so, the group followed the Taiwu Empire Elder to the center of the swamp. There was an enormous swamp pond in the center of the swamp. It looked no different from the rest of the swamp. However, the Taiwu Empire Elder pointed at the pond. "This swamp pond is not an ordinary place. If I'm not wrong, it should be an ancient ruin. Without a doubt, this is Long Yu's destination." Ancient ruin, I didn't think that the kid would bring us to such a good place. The people of the Shunluo Empire were pleasantly surprised. Who didn't want to enter an ancient ruin? Everyone knows that every single ancient ruin in Shen Wu world holds a great fortune. If you can obtain it, your cultivation strength will go through a drastic change. Don't be too happy yet. The Grand Wu Empire Elder's face immediately darkened. "I've divined again and found that only cultivators below the Martial Emperor stage can enter this ancient ruin. Once one reaches the Martial Emperor stage and has mastered the power of divination, they will be blocked by the ancient ruin and cannot enter." So that's the case? A mid-stage emperor from the Shunluo Empire, the city lord of the City of Desolate God, Situ Kong, was Situ Liuli's father. Because Long Yu had bullied Situ Liuli, he was the most diligent in capturing Long Yu. Other than him, the great general of the Desolate God City's general's mansion had also participated in the operation to capture Long Yu. Unfortunately, at this point in time, these Emperor Realm experts were at their wits' end. So what if he was a emperor? If they couldn't enter the ancient ruin, they couldn't capture Long Yu. It doesn't matter, we have many late-stage Emperor Realm cultivators here. We can send any of them to capture that brat and explore the ancient ruins. The general of the city of desolate gods' general's eyes flashed with anticipation as he quickly arranged for his subordinates to enter the ancient ruins. There were many late Emperor Realm lieutenant generals and mid-Emperor Realm army captains among his subordinate. These people were all trustworthy, and they would definitely inform him if they discovered anything in the ancient ruins. Perhaps he would be the one to gain the most from this operation. The general was filled with anticipation. Mid-stage Emperor Realm cultivators, be careful. According to the news from the North Snow Empire, that long you can kill a mid-stage Emperor Realm cultivator. The Taiwu Empire elder said with a serious expression. Don't worry, we are soldiers of the Empire, not as weak as those small families of the North Snow Empire. Plus, we have many late-stage Emperor Realm cultivators inside, enough to capture that brat. The general didn't care at all. With an order, the Emperor Realm cultivators under him charged into the swamp below. A burst of spatial divine characters flashed, and the Emperor Realm cultivators all disappeared. They must have entered the ancient ruins. Chapter 835. The Death Envoy told Long Yu that this ancient ruin was the wreckage of the small world of the Sufferers. As for who the Sufferers were, Long Yu didn't know. But with a slight guess, he knew that it should be an expert who was imprisoned here by the Jiuyou Dragon Emperor. Of course, it was a former expert. Now that the small world had become a wreckage, it could be imagined that the so-called Sufferers had already died. If it wasn't for Long Yu using the seal imparted by the Death Envoy to open the door of this ancient ruin, and if it was handed over to the people of the Shenluo Empire, they wouldn't be able to find this ancient ruin even after 10,000 years. Since there was a way to open it, there was naturally a way to close it. But after Long Yu entered, he didn't close it, but opened the door, wanting to let others in. There was no other reason. Long Yu completely wanted to trap and kill those so-called martial arts experts in the ancient ruin. Don't you want to kill me? I'll let you have a taste of my power. The Death Envoy imparted to Long Yu 5 seals, one to open the small world, one to close the small world, and the other 3 seals could be used to control the various arrays in the small world. But now that this small world had become a wreckage, even the Death Envoy didn't know how many arrays were left in it, so he could only rely on Long Yu to explore it himself. Anyway, as long as it was an intact array, it could be activated by Long Yu. Long Yu stepped into this small world from the central pond of the swamp, and the first thing that came into view was a broken starry sky. As far as the eye could see, there were countless wreckage of planets floating in the empty, pitch-black void, and cracks in the space that could be seen with the naked eye were constantly appearing in front of Long Yu's eyes. If one was not careful, one would be completely swallowed by those cracks in the space, and even an Emperor Realm expert wouldn't be able to survive. This was indeed the wreckage of a small world, but there were still many good things in it. If Long Yu could obtain them, it would be very helpful to improve his strength. The Death Envoy said that the Sufferers from beyond the heavens are all natural-born alchemists. This is an extremely special race that possesses great power even beyond the heavens, because they have grasped the refinement methods of many rare medicinal pills. As for the Sufferers sealed in this Jiuyou Dragon Emperor's small world, Long Yu guessed that they were probably captured by Jiuyou Dragon Emperor to concoct medicinal pills for him. So if his luck was good, Long Yu would definitely be able to find a lot of rare pills in the ruins of this miniature world. The rare I'm talking about here refers to how rare they are even in outer space. As for Shen Wu world, there is only one of them, no other. Through the Death Envoy's teachings, Long Yu was able to distinguish between the real and fake space cracks in the ancient ruins. A real space crack is the result of a small world being hit by a huge force, causing it to break apart and become irreparably damaged. Entering a space crack like this would only result in death. But a fake space crack is actually a teleportation crack. All the Sufferers are very proficient in the power of divine runes. Small worlds are extremely vast, so there would definitely be a few teleportation formations set up in their own small worlds, called teleportation cracks. These teleportation cracks look exactly the same as a real space crack. Only by using a special seal to detect them can one tell if they are real or fake. This was one of the other 3 seals that the Death Envoy taught Long Yu. As soon as Long Yu entered the ruins of the small world, he didn't hesitate at all and immediately used this seal to identify a fake space crack and went inside. He trusted the Death Envoy a lot. Sure enough, he appeared at a place who knows how far away. At this place, the number of space cracks were a lot fewer, at least they weren't all over the place as he looked. Sure enough, the closer one was to the exit of the Sufferer's small world, the more damaged it was, and the more space cracks there were. In fact, even now, Long Yu still doesn't know what a seal is. In the Sacred Tower, he only needed to use a seal to teleport to any floor. In the ruins of the Sufferer's small world, he could also use the seal to control the things inside. Long Yu had a guess. Could it be, the inside of the Sacred Tower is actually a small world as well? As long as it's a small world, the creator of the small world can set up a few seals so that other people can use these seals to control the things inside the small world? But Long Yu doesn't know the specifics. But he knows very well that both the seals in the Sacred Tower and the seals in the ruins of the small world in front of him are completely useless in Shen Wu world. These dermic seals were all specialized dermic seals. Then there's another problem. Shen Wu world is also a small world, but the difference is that this is the Geo-Dragon Emperor's small world. Long Yu suddenly thought of this and frowned. As one of the 4 envoys under the Geo-Dragon Emperor, the Death Envoy should know a lot of Shen Wu world's seals, right? If my guess about the seals is correct, then the Death Envoy should be invincible in this Shen Wu world. Whatever, I'll ask the Death Envoy when I get back. There's no point in guessing by himself. It's better for him to explore the ruins of the small world in front of him first. The Umbra Eye instantly expanded outwards. However, within a radius of 100 miles, there was nothing at all. This caused Long Yu's heart to sink. Wasn't the space of this small world a little too big? The inner world of a late-stage King Realm cultivator is around 10,000 miles. If it's Emperor Realm, 100,000 miles, 1,000,000 miles, or even 10 million miles. If it's Emperor Realm, it's at least 100 million miles. If it's peak Emperor Realm, it could even be 300 million miles. Once it surpasses Emperor Realm and becomes an even stronger existence, its inner world will turn into a small world, a world that can truly nurture life, just like Shen Wu world. It's not hard to imagine just how big this small world is. It's as hard to explore as the stars in the universe. Long Yu had no choice but to continue approaching one of the spatial cracks, forming a hand seal from afar to try to activate it. Finding no reaction, he gave up and flew towards another spatial crack. Forming another hand seal, a white light shot out from the spatial crack and enveloped Long Yu. In the next second, Long Yu was teleported to another place. Long Yu knows that he's heading deeper into the small world. If there were any pills left behind by the sufferers, they would definitely be stored in the depths of the small world. Relying on the seals that the Death Envoy taught him, he continued to move forward. As for the Shen Luo Empire's Emperor Realm cultivators that followed him in, they weren't so lucky. The wreckage of this small world was simply too huge. Long Yu formed a hand seal and used the spatial crack to teleport tens of millions of miles away. But these Emperor Realm cultivators didn't understand hand seals, so they couldn't activate the spatial crack. After paying the price of 3 people, they finally realized that these spatial cracks couldn't be touched at all. Touching them would only result in death. Therefore, they had no choice but to avoid these spatial cracks and fly rapidly inside. Fortunately, they were Emperor Realm cultivators and their flying speed wasn't slow at all. After a day, they finally flew out of the distance that Long Yu could teleport once. However, faced with the boundless pitch-black void, these people were extremely anxious. The ancient ruins were connected in all directions. They had no idea where Long Yu had gone. But exploring an ancient ruin would take at least 10 days to half a month, so they didn't pay too much attention to it. They only left a small group of 5 to guard the entrance, while the others went off in different directions. There were more than 100 people who had entered the ancient ruins, but when they scattered, it was as if no one had come here at all. Compared to the ancient ruins, humans were simply too insignificant. Forget 100, even if 1,000,000 people surged in, the ancient ruins wouldn't be able to detect them after they scattered. The ancient ruins was an extremely dangerous place. They had just entered and tried to test the spatial crack, but 3 people had already died. Therefore, everyone was very cautious. What they didn't know was that after flying for a day, Long Yu had already advanced to the center of the small world. After teleporting a dozen or so times, Long Yu found himself in a dangerous place. In front of him was a giant spatial crack that could split the sky and earth. It was as if the entire small world had been split in half. Long Yu didn't dare to activate the teleportation crack in front of him. That was because that enormous spatial crack was like a ferocious tiger that was choosing its prey. Even if there was a teleportation crack, if he was teleported into that enormous spatial crack, then he wouldn't even know how he died. He could only choose to retreat to the spatial crack and change his path. After teleporting 3 times, he was once again faced with the giant spatial crack. His heart sank and he retreated once more. He kept trying to take a detour, but he hadn't expected the spatial crack to be hundreds of millions of kilometers long. He couldn't go around it no matter how hard he tried. Finally, he arrived at the end of the spatial crack after a series of teleportations. He could finally fly over slowly. As for teleporting over directly, Long Yu still didn't dare. It took Long Yu 4 days to circle around the giant spatial crack. And this was only because he had mastered the seal and could teleport. By the time the Emperor Realm cultivators arrived, it would probably take them 10 days to half a month to circle around the spatial crack. After circling around the giant spatial crack, Long Yu knew that he was close to his destination. A row of spatial cracks appeared in front of him. This was the transfer point for the small world's ruins. Through these spatial cracks, Long Yu could reach the true core of the small world, the pill refinement rooms. Of course, only one of the 8 spatial cracks led to the pill refinement rooms. The others led to storerooms, residences, and so on. Up until now, Long Yu hadn't seen the existence of any living beings, not even the remains of the dead. His heart sank and he finally chose one of the spatial cracks. He activated the seal and shot out a tiny white beam of light from the spatial crack. It struck Long Yu and transported him to the next place. Swoosh! What appeared in front of Long Yu was actually a vast and boundless grassland. However, this grassland had long since been barren. Right above Long Yu's head, far away in the void, there was a teleportation crack. This was the passageway to return to that place. Chapter 836. Long Yu flew towards the place he detected. Since the Eye of Shadow can't detect anything more than 100 miles, Long Yu only needed a few breaths of time to get there. When he arrived, Long Yu saw a bunch of broken buildings. It looked like a small city, but now all that was left of it was the remains of a city. As Long Yu flew forward, he found that there were quite a few skeletons among the buildings. Obviously some kind of creature once lived here, but unfortunately, they've been dead for who knows how many years. This is a world, a small world just like Shin Wu World. When Long Yu saw this scene, his heart finally shook. Although there are countless ancient ruins in Shin Wu World, most of them are small ones. As for a large ruin like this small world of the afflicted victims, Long Yu has never heard of anyone finding it before. And now, he's arrived at this small world, a place for living beings to live. This continent has already become an endless wasteland, devoid of any life, a barren wasteland. But not too long ago, before this small world was destroyed, this place was probably just as prosperous as the current Shen Wu world. As Long Yu moved forward, he didn't even walk 1,000 miles before he saw the remains of many similar cities. But without exception, all of these cities have been destroyed, devoid of any living beings. Long Yu recalled the giant spatial crack he saw not too long ago. That was a place hundreds of millions of miles away from this barren continent, but because of that giant spatial crack, the entire ruins of the afflicted victim's small world were shaken. As Long Yu looked around, on this barren continent, giant cracks could be seen everywhere, mountains were cut off, rivers were completely dried up. This was an apocalyptic scene. Long Yu really wanted to know what happened back then, so he thought about the current Shenwu world. Jiyo Dragon Emperor's small world couldn't possibly be smaller than this one, so it must have been much larger. Within the ruins of this small world, this continent of living beings is only a very small part of it. Then, within Jiyo Dragon Emperor's small world, is Shenwu world also a very small part of it? Long Yu thought about the vortex 10,000 miles above Shenwu world. That's one of Jiyo Dragon Emperor's 7 thaumaturgies, a vortex formed by the vortex, known as one of the 7 forbidden areas of Shenwu world. But no one has ever been able to reach that place, they can only see it from afar, just like the sun and moon. How far away is that vortex from Shenwu world? Shenwu world must only be one of Jiyo Dragon Emperor's small worlds. But knowing this won't help me much right now, Long Yu shook his head and returned the way he came. There was nothing left on this barren continent, which means he won't be able to find anything useful here. Even if there is, he'll have to wait until he finds the alchemy rooms and storage rooms of the victims. Long Yu went through the spatial crack and returned to the previous transfer station. Looking at the other 8 cracks, he picked one and activated it. A white light shot out and teleported Long Yu away. This time, when Long Yu opened his eyes, he was given a fright. That was because in the void less than 50 miles away from him, there was actually a spatial rift. From this spatial rift, an extremely powerful suction force was emitting, wanting to suck Long Yu in. Too close. Long Yu had never been so close to a spatial crack before. He didn't think that it would have such a strong suction force. Gritting his teeth, he hurriedly circulated all the power in his body and flew away. Long Yu was unable to use the laws of heaven and earth that he grasped within the remains of this small world. However, he could use the divine runes to resist the suction force of the spatial crack, allowing Long Yu to slowly move away from the spatial crack. That was close. Long Yu's heart jumped. If the teleportation distance was a bit closer, he probably wouldn't have been able to escape from that spatial crack. As he looked back, the spatial crack was like a giant gaping mouth, taking up more than half of his vision. But as he moved further away, the spatial crack became smaller and smaller, until it was the same size as a normal spatial crack or a teleportation crack. Long Yu was instantly overwhelmed with shock. So any random spatial crack in the ruins of this small world is even more spectacular than the sanctum, but from afar, he didn't think much of it. If that's the case, then how big is the giant spatial crack that he went around before? It's probably even bigger than the entire Shenwu world. But very quickly, Long Yu regained his senses from his shock, because he found that he had finally reached his destination. The storage room in the ruins of this small world. Appearing in front of Long Yu was a giant palace floating in the void of space. This palace was bigger than any palace Long Yu had ever seen before, or even any city. Even the sanctum looked like a toothpick in front of this palace. Majestic, magnificent, Long Yu's mind was unable to find the right words to describe this huge palace. He only knew that he had definitely found the place, because this place was exactly the same as what the Death Envoy had said. But what made Long Yu's heart sink was that in the middle of this palace, there was a spatial crack that completely pierced through it, splitting it in half. This place was the storage room for the sufferers, a place to store pills. But the middle part of it had already been pierced through by the spatial crack. Most of the things inside had already been destroyed by the spatial crack. Will I still be able to find the ancient pills I want? Long Yu thought to himself as he cautiously approached. Moreover, he condensed 6 desolate ancient phantoms and flew towards the different entrances of the palace. In front of this palace, Long Yu and his desolate shadows were like ants. No, they weren't even as small as ants, they were too small. After going through the 7 different entrances, the first thing they saw were 7 different palaces. In the middle of each of these palaces was an extremely exquisite stone platform. On top of each platform was a pill bottle that gave off an ancient aura. Found it, open it. Under Long Yu's command, the desolate ancient shadow stepped forward and attempted to open the medicinal bottles that emitted an ancient aura. However, in the next moment, the 6 primordial shadows faced the same scene at the same time. A beam of white light descended from the sky and enveloped the primordial shadows. In just an instant, all the primordial shadows were obliterated by the white light. Just as I thought, Long Yu thought to himself, but he wasn't disheartened. He raised his hand and formed a seal, before walking towards the ancient pill bottle in front of him. The white light that destroyed the desolate shadows did not appear. Long Yu successfully arrived in front of the stone platform and picked up the ancient pill bottle. Pill extraction seal. If I didn't have the pill extraction seal, I wouldn't have been able to obtain these pills. Instead, I would have been completely destroyed by the protective array. To think that the entire palace was split in half by the spatial crack, but the protective array is still working. Long Yu sighed with emotion, before opening the pill bottle in his hand. An ancient fragrance wafted into his nostrils. Long Yu looked at the pill bottle and discovered that there was only one pill inside. Although he couldn't tell what this pill was used for, he could tell that it was definitely an ancient transcendent grade pill or above. Ordinary ancient grade pills wouldn't have such a strong fragrance. This pill had a similar aura to the heavenly demon pill that Long Yu had consumed, but there were some differences. I can only bring it back for the death envoy to appraise. Long Yu kept the pill and continued to form the desolate shadows as he walked deeper into the palace. The spatial crack stretched across the palace, and a suction force could be felt at any time. Long Yu had to let the desolate shadows lead the way. Otherwise, he wouldn't even know how he died. Step by step, Long Yu moved forward cautiously. He realized that the deeper he went, the stronger the aura of the pills, and the higher the quality. He had only reached the 3rd hall, but he had already obtained a pill that was at least of the Archean grade. He was overjoyed. This trip was too rewarding. Just as Long Yu moved towards the 4th hall, the 6 desolate shadows felt a suction force at the same time, causing them to lose their balance. However, the suction force wasn't too strong, and they weren't completely sucked away. After entering the palace where the medicinal pills were stored, the path was clear. Long Yu could even see the spatial rifts outside of the 7 palace halls. The 7th hall had already been completely destroyed by the spatial crack. With the materials used to build this grand palace, only the 7th hall could withstand the suction force of the spatial crack. If it were Long Yu, he definitely wouldn't have been able to go so far. Each hall was 100 miles away, and Long Yu was still 400 miles away from the 7th hall. However, he had a feeling that if he went another 100 miles, he wouldn't be able to withstand the suction force of the spatial crack. It's a pity that I can only obtain pills from 4 halls. Long Yu felt that it was a pity. However, when he stood in the 4th hall, he discovered that the suction force of the spatial crack was quite terrifying. If he went any further, he would definitely die. He cautiously retreated as he opened the pill in the 4th hall. He discovered that there was indeed a rare pill that exuded a boundless ancient aura. It was at least of the Archean grade, Long Yu silently thought. It was already quite good for other people of Shen Wu world to be able to obtain an Archean grade pill when exploring the age-of-old ruins. Like the Black Blade and Yeeziwei, it was because they explored quite a few age-of-old ruins and obtained many Archean grade pills that their cultivation was able to increase so quickly. But now, Long Yu was able to easily obtain an Archean-grade pill. Aside from the extremely dense spirit essence of the world contained within, Archean-grade pills all have their own unique effects. This made it even more attractive to Long Yu. If I can comprehend Dark Shadow Divine script to level 9, I'll be able to cultivate divine formations and become invincible at the same level. Long Yu's heart was burning with passion. He didn't leave just like that. Instead, he retreated from this hall and entered the other entrance of the palace. There were a total of 18 entrances to the entire palace. Each of the 18 entrances had a clear path. If Long Yu could obtain 4 pills from each entrance, then Long Yu would have a total of 72 pills. What kind of wealth is that, compared to the alliance of 5 emperors? Chapter 837. After spending an entire day, Long Yutsai finally walked through all 18 entrances of the storage palace. Furthermore, he walked through 4 halls from each entrance. There were a total of 72 medicinal pill bottles. Unfortunately, some of them were empty. In the end, Long Yu obtained 51 medicinal pills, all of which were ancient grade and immemorial grade. There was even a large pile of transcendent grade and peak grade medicinal pills. However, Long Yu didn't dare to use them rashly, so he decided to go back and ask the Death Envoy first. Long Yu looked at the halls at the back, very envious, but it was a pity that if he went any further, he would be sucked away by the spatial crack that traversed the entire hall. If he lost his life, it wouldn't be worth it. However, when Long Yu saw that there were still 3 more palace halls behind, all of them were filled with pill bottles that were protected by spirit arrays. He felt rather reluctant. There were so many pills, but he could see them but he couldn't get them. It was really too puzzling. The entire storage palace originally had at least tens of thousands of halls, which stored tens of thousands of pills. Even if most of them were destroyed by the spatial crack, there were still a few hundred that weren't destroyed. And now, Long Yu had only obtained 51 pills. Naturally, he wasn't too satisfied. It wasn't that he didn't know how to be content, but he was very clear that he wouldn't have such an opportunity again after this. Where would the other ancient ruins have so many pills for him? Every sufferer was a natural alchemist, and the one who was caught by the Geo Dragon Emperor was probably the only one. Let's see if I can use other methods. Long Yu narrowed his eyes and thought hard. The entire palace was pitch black, but as long as Long Yu formed a hand seal, the surrounding stone walls would all light up, illuminating the entire hall. This hand seal was exactly the same as the one used to close the protective arrays of the pills. Suddenly, Long Yu had an idea and formed the hand seal, extinguishing all the light in the surroundings. Ancient shadow, turn into a shadow and move forward. Long Yu formed an ancient shadow, and then turned it into a shadow, moving forward in the darkness. Soon, he discovered that the spatial crack really didn't have any suction force on pure shadows. Anything else, even if Long Yu formed a 9 netherhand, would be sucked away by the spatial crack, but after turning into a shadow, it wouldn't be affected by any suction force. This solved the problem of the spatial crack's suction force, but in this way, there was another problem in front of Long Yu, and that was that after turning into a shadow, he couldn't form a hand seal, and couldn't close the protective arrays of the pills. How could he take the pills? Long Yu pondered for a moment, then stopped the ancient shadow from turning into a shadow and stood in the hall again, and instantly felt the strong suction force of the spatial crack. However, Long Yu immediately made the desolate ancient shadow cast the 9 underworld heavenly light, enveloping the entire palace hall in the black fog of the 9 underworld heavenly light. The ancient shadow, which was originally affected by the suction force, instantly stopped in place, which made Long Yu overjoyed. Sure enough, the light of 9 nether could block all the effects of the spatial divine characters, and even when facing the suction force of the spatial crack, it could still stop it. Unfortunately, the light of 9 nether could completely not affect the spatial divine characters, but it itself would be sucked away by the spatial crack's suction force, and the speed at which it was sucked away was quite fast. This had already given Long Yu enough opportunities. If he still couldn't obtain more pills, he might as well just knock his head against the wall and die. As expected of the ancient martial skill Light of Nine Nether, this was a martial skill used by the Geo Dragon Emperor. Naturally, it was extraordinary, especially after he cultivated it to perfection. If he could step into the transcendent realm, the effect of this move would be even more shocking. The Light of Nine Nether cast by the ancient shadow only needed 2 breaths' time for all the black fog to be sucked away by the spatial crack's suction force. Therefore, Long Yu had to constantly cast the 9 underworld heavenly light. The 9 underworld heavenly light he cast himself could only last for 3 breaths of time. However, Long Yu still needed time to form seals. Therefore, he could only continuously condense desolate ancient afterimages and let them cast the 9 underworld heavenly light one after another. Fortunately, he had stepped into the Emperor Path secret realm, otherwise he wouldn't be able to do this. It was precisely because he could continuously cast the Light of Nine Nether that he was slowly approaching the next hall, that the energy in his body was constantly being consumed. Almost every 20 breaths' time, he had to absorb a shadow attribute beast crystal. This made him pay a huge price. Even though he had stored thousands of beast crystals in the Void Spirit Dragon Blade, he couldn't keep up with this kind of consumption. But compared to the pills he was about to obtain, these beast crystals were not even worth mentioning. When Long Yu returned, he spent 50,000 shinbi to exchange for these 1,000 beast crystals. But if he could obtain one more pill here, it would be worth more than 50 million shinbi. This was a transaction that was 1,000 times more valuable. Anyone would be willing to do it. Hand seal open. After going through a lot of hardships, Long Yu finally moved forward 100 li and arrived at the 5th hall. Then, he formed a hand seal to cancel the protective formation that stored the pills, and grabbed the pill bottle in his hand. Since I'm already here, I can't let go of the 6th and even the 7th hall. As Long Yu cast the Light of Nine Nether, he flew forward quickly. But this was too much of a consumption. He soon discovered that he had already used up 10 beast crystals by the time he reached the 5th hall. At this rate, he wouldn't have enough beast crystals to take away all the pills. Not to mention, the closer he got to the spatial crack, the stronger the suction force, and the faster his energy would be consumed. Long Yu thought about it and made an extremely bold decision. He gave up on using the Light of Nine Nether to conceal himself as he advanced. Instead, he directly exposed himself in the palace passageway and was quickly sucked in by the spatial crack's suction force. Although it was extremely dangerous, this action allowed him to quickly reach the 6th hall 100 li away. Moreover, he didn't have to spend a single beast crystal. Upon reaching the 6th palace hall, Long Yu reacted quickly. In that instant, he raised his hand and unleashed the 9 underworld heaven light, enveloping the entire palace hall. After that, the desolate ages afterimages condensed and began to take turns to unleash the 9 underworld heaven light. The 9 nether heavenly lights cast by the desolate ancient shadows only needed a breath's time to be completely absorbed. So, Long Yu's consumption in the 6th hall was more than double that of the 5th hall. Fortunately, it only took 3 breaths' time for Long Yu to continue letting go, quickly heading towards the 7th hall. He had already obtained the pill bottle from the 6th hall. Everything had gone smoothly, but he needed to be even more careful. This was because at this point, the suction force from the spatial crack was becoming increasingly strong. By the time he reached the 7th hall, the 9 nether heavenly light that Long Yu's desolate ancient shadows condensed would be completely sucked away by the suction force in half a breath's time. Long Yu's consumption had doubled once more. All that was left of the 7th hall were broken walls. Further ahead was an endless void. He was likely thousands of miles away from the spatial crack, but the suction force was already extremely great. Even the palaces that had been fused with countless first-rate divine rune crystals couldn't resist the suction force of the spatial crack at such a close distance. If Long Yu continued forwards, he wouldn't even be able to condense the 9 nether heavenly light to stop himself from being sucked into the spatial crack. This was because the suction force was far too strong. With his current level of 9 nether heavenly light, it was impossible for him to withstand it. Long Yu was not in the mood to observe the ruins of this palace. After obtaining the elixir from the 7th palace hall, he immediately turned around and flew back to where he came from. At this moment, he could not conserve his energy like he did when he came here. He had to constantly condense divine rune crystals and condense the desolate ancient shadows. Only then could he return step by step and resist the tyrannical suction force of the spatial crack. From the 7th hall to the 6th hall, he had used up a total of 40 beast crystals. From the 6th hall to the 5th hall, he had used up another 20 beast crystals. Finally, from the 5th hall to the safe 4th hall, he had used up 10 beast crystals. In other words, he had obtained 3 pill bottles on this trip, which meant that he had used up 70 beast crystals. If I calculate it like this, then if I want to go through the other 17 entrances, I will need a total of 1,200 beast crystals to restore my strength. I have less than 900 on me right now. It's not enough. But even if it wasn't enough, Long Yu wouldn't stop doing this, because he had really profited greatly this way. He opened the medicine bottle from the 7th palace hall, and immediately, an ancient medicinal fragrance wafted out. With just a sniff, Long Yu felt as if he had been transported to an endless battlefield, watching countless ancient existences constantly killing each other on the battlefield. This was a pill that surpassed the Archean level. Right now, Long Yu couldn't take it anymore. He immediately closed the pill bottle, and this made him even more determined to go to the other entrances and get the pill out of the 7th hall. A pill that surpassed the Archean level. Just what level would it be? Long Yu hadn't heard the Envoy of Death mention it before, but he knew that it definitely existed. A pill that surpassed the Archean level contained spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and it could even be tens of thousands of times that of an Archean level pill. One had to know that there was a difference of 1 level between the Archean and Archean level. And how much stronger would a pill that surpassed the Archean level be compared to an Archean level pill? Not to mention, a pill that surpassed the Archean level could possibly contain some sort of unique effect. This wasn't something that the current Long Yu wouldn't know about. In fact, no one in the entire Shen Wu world would know about. A pill that surpassed the primordial grade was a priceless treasure to Long Yu. What did it matter to him to expend a mere 70 exotic beast crystals? Long Yu continued to work, entering the other entrances one after another, going deep into the 7th hall and taking away the pill bottles inside. After 7 days and 7 nights, Long Yu had gone through all 10 entrances and obtained another 30 pill bottles. But unfortunately, 6 of them were empty, leaving only 24 pills. Among them, only the pill that Long Yu obtained the first time was a pill that surpassed the Archean level. The other pills in the 7th hall were either Archean level supreme or Archean level supreme level pills. And after 7 days and 7 nights, Long Yu continued to use the 9 underworld heavenly light without stopping, finally allowing this martial skill to achieve another breakthrough. Chapter 838. When Long Yu had used the 9 underworld heavenly light thousands of times, he finally broke through. His whole body trembled. He had finally broken through. Breaking through to the transcendent realm, the stability of the 9 underworld heavenly light had increased by 10 times. In other words, if he wanted to disperse the 9 underworld heavenly light, he would need 10 times more power than before. In other words, the suction force of the spatial rift would take 10 times more time to completely absorb the 9 underworld heavenly light. This gave Long Yu an excellent opportunity. If it was before, he wouldn't have had enough elixirs to go through all 18 entrances. But now there were 8 entrances left. The amount of beast crystals he had to consume was equivalent to one of the previous entrances. I still have 200 beast crystals on me. Another 70 at most, and I'll be able to go through all 18 entrances and get all the elixirs in the 7th palace hall. Long Yu thought to himself as he sped up. Exploring the previous 10 entrances took Long Yu 7 days and 7 nights. But for the next 8 entrances, Long Yu spent a total of 3 days. When he finally explored all the remaining palaces, he had already obtained 99 elixirs. At the very least, they were ancient supreme grade elixirs. Each of them had different properties. In other words, Long Yu could consume all of them and absorb all of their spiritual energy. 99 elixirs. 70 ancient grade elixirs, 26 immemorial grade elixirs, and 3 transcending immemorial grade elixirs. This is a rich harvest. But if not for the seal provided by the Death Envoy, I wouldn't have been able to obtain these elixirs. In fact, I wouldn't even have gotten one, as Long Yu thought to himself. He flew a little further away from the palace hall and continued to observe it. Soon, he thought of something. Since the front of the palace hall stored so many elixirs, what about the back of the palace hall? A spatial rift divided the palace hall into 2. There were a total of 18 rows. The front 18 rows only had 7 palaces left, but what about the back? It'll take about 3 days to bypass the spatial rift and check the back of the palace hall. I can't let go of such a good opportunity. Long Yu made up his mind and began to circle around the spatial rift as fast as he could. He always maintained a certain distance from the spatial rift so that he wouldn't be affected by the suction force of the spatial rift. He continued to circle around the back of the palace. Sure enough, after a little more than 2 days, he finally reached the back of the spatial rift. He found that compared to the relatively intact front of the palace, the back of the palace was like a ruin. Due to the effects of the spatial rift, the entire rear of the palace had been reduced to ruins. However, there were many larger pieces floating in the void. Long Yu directly flew towards the first large portion and discovered that it was indeed a palace hall that stored pills. However, this palace hall was only left with half of it. The pill bottles that should have been placed on the stone pillars had already disappeared without a trace. If the protective array of the elixir was destroyed, it would be very difficult to keep it here. A bottle of elixir was easily sucked away by the spatial crack. Long Yu didn't give up, and continued to search for the next large piece of the rear of the palace hall. However, he found a total of more than 30 building ruins, and only one of them had elixirs in good condition. As expected, it's another elixir that surpasses the Archean grade. The elixir stored at the back of the palace hall must be of a higher quality than the elixir stored at the front. It's a pity that the entire back of the palace hall is in ruins. Most of the elixirs have been sucked into the spatial rift. Long Yu was quite happy to obtain the 100th elixir, because the aura of this elixir was even thicker than the aura of the 3 elixirs that surpassed the Archean grade. It was clearly of a higher quality. As for the specific grade, Long Yu couldn't identify it, because elixirs of this grade were beyond his imagination. It was naturally difficult to identify something he had never seen before. However, Long Yu wasn't in a hurry. As long as he found the Death Envoy, he could easily identify these elixirs. As for now, he couldn't casually consume them in case something went wrong. The entire storage palace had been plundered clean by Long Yu. At this moment, it had already been close to a month since Long Yu had entered the ancient ruins. Even though he had the seal imparted to him by the Death Envoy, it still took him so much time. This was because the ruins of the ancient small world were just too big. Next, Long Yu didn't wander around, but waited at the entrance of the palace hall. He was obviously waiting for those fellows from the Shenluo Empire. When Long Yu first opened this ancient ruins, there was a restriction on entry. Only cultivators below the Great Emperor realm could enter. However, Long Yu heard from the Death Envoy that there was a control core in the ruins of the small world. That core could be controlled to relax the entry requirements of the small world, allowing great Emperor Realm experts to enter. Long Yu was like a fish in water in the ruins of the small world. How could he be satisfied with dealing with those Emperor Realm experts? Moreover, if he didn't deal with the great Emperor Realm experts outside, Long Yu wouldn't be able to escape back to the holy city of the 5 emperors alive. Therefore, all of his actions were planned. Right now, he was waiting at the entrance of the storage palace. He knew that there were many Emperor Realm cultivators here who could track his location. Sooner or later, those people would come to Long Yu. As for whether they would run to other places and cause trouble, Long Yu wasn't worried at all. Everything in the ruins of the small world needed to be controlled by the seal. Without the seal, it was impossible to obtain anything from the small world. Other than the palace hall, the other place Long Yu wanted to go was the pill refining room. However, according to his calculations, those Emperor Realm experts should be here soon. Wait. Long Yu cultivated the Dubhe-chi drawing technique as he waited. What surprised him was that he could actually sense the aura of the Dubhe stars in the wreckage of this small world. From there, he could cultivate the Dubhe-chi drawing technique. His Dubhe-chi drawing technique was about to step into the transcendent state, but he still couldn't break through. He didn't know why, but once he stepped into the transcendent state, his cultivation speed would once again increase explosively. About 5 days later, Long Yu finally sensed the presence of several living beings from the distant void. They were the auras of Emperor Realm experts. They're here. Long Yu opened his eyes and stopped cultivating. He turned around to face the palace and pretended that he'd just arrived. He stepped into one of the entrances. His figure flashed by and just happened to fall into the eyes of a few Emperor Realm cultivators who had arrived at the scene. There were 5 mid-Emperor Realm cultivators and 3 late Emperor Realm cultivators. 2 of them were demon cultivators. As soon as they saw the enormous palace that had been split in half by the spatial rift, they sensed a figure flash past the palace entrance. It's that brat after him. The eyes of the 8 Emperor Realm cultivators lit up. They'd chased after Long Yu for more than a month in this desolate small world and hated him to the bone. Now that they saw a majestic-looking palace, they just happened to see Long Yu's figure, which immediately raised their spirits. We've finally caught up. Moreover, this was probably the deepest part of the small world. If there were any treasures in this place, they would definitely be hidden here. The 8 of them rushed towards the palace as fast as they could. They quickly chose the entrance that Long Yu had entered and cautiously chased after him. Although they had a great advantage in martial Dao compared to Long Yu, who was only at the mid-Emperor realm, they were still very cautious. There were many secrets in the ancient ruins. Long Yu might have set up some kind of trap for them since he'd arrived here before them. But their eyes lit up very quickly because they'd arrived at the first hall and saw an extremely exquisite and simple medicine bottle on the stone platform at the center of the hall. A pill. The 8 of them grew excited at the same time, but none of them dared to advance rashly because they hadn't seen Long Yu's figure. The scene in front of them was simply too strange. Long Yu was the first to enter, but he was nowhere to be seen. What appeared in front of them was a bottle of pills. If the pills were so easy to obtain, why hadn't Long Yu taken them? Therefore, they were both overjoyed and on high alert. Those who could cultivate to the mid or late Emperor realm in this world couldn't be rash idiots. But they soon relaxed, because they saw Long Yu appear in the palace where the elixirs were, and he was quickly fleeing towards the back. After him. The 8 of them made a decision at the same time. Since Long Yu had appeared in the hall, it was obvious that there wasn't any danger in the hall. They could chase after him without worry. As long as they killed Long Yu first, they could explore the ruins without worry. However, by the time the three of them arrived at the first palace hall, Long Yu had already left the first palace hall and was heading towards the passageway between the first and second palace halls. Then, he formed a hand seal with his back to everyone. The pill protective formation that had been shut down was activated once again. 3 beams of white light instantly shot out and shone on the 3 Emperor Realm martial cultivators who were charging at the front. Immediately, an incomparably terrifying force tore the 3 Emperor Realm martial cultivators into pieces. They didn't even have a chance to resist. The other 5 who'd wanted to rush in immediately stopped in their track. They looked at the place where the 3 Emperor Realm martial cultivators had been annihilated by the white light in shock and bewilderment. They were drenched in cold sweat. Of the 3 who'd been annihilated, only one was a late-stage King Realm martial cultivator. The other 2 were early-stage King Realm martial cultivators who were relatively faster. As for the other 2 late-stage King Realm martial cultivators, they'd been more cautious and had purposely slowed down their speed. What's going on? The remaining 5 looked at each other in dismay, before turning their gazes towards Long Yu. They subconsciously felt that it was definitely Long Yu who was behind them. However, when they looked at Long Yu, they discovered that Long Yu also had a bewildered expression on his face. It was obvious that he hadn't expected such a thing to happen here. They saw a layer of joy in the depths of Long Yu's eyes. He seemed to be glad that the beams of light hadn't appeared when he passed through the hall. Of course, this was Long Yu's disguise. Life is like a play, and it all depends on acting skills. Chapter 839. The expression on Long Yu's face caused the remaining 5 to believe that the white light beam that annihilated their teammate wasn't released by Long Yu. Otherwise, why would he be so surprised and relieved? Since that was the case, the 5 were more at ease. If Long Yu could control such a terrifying white light beam, how were they supposed to fight against Long Yu? It was already good enough that they weren't killed by Long Yu. Thus, one of them condensed an illusion doppelganger and let that illusion doppelganger enter the first palace. Long Yu frowned slightly, but he didn't pay any attention to them. Instead, he turned around and fled further inside, as if he was very afraid of these Emperor Realm experts. This was also a normal reaction for Long Yu in the eyes of these Emperor Realm experts. After all, they were all Emperor Realm experts. If Long Yu was caught by them, he would definitely die. If Long Yu wasn't here, the 5 of them wouldn't have been annihilated by the pill's defensive array. When they saw that the illusion avatar was fine in the hall, they charged in together and flew towards the stone platform at the center of the hall. They quickly grabbed the pill bottle. It's an ancient supreme rank pill at the very least. But it's empty now. It looks like that kid took it. One of them's expression darkened. An ancient supreme rank pill. The others were overjoyed. They felt like they were about to strike it rich. If a random hall could contain an ancient supreme rank pill, then what about the other halls? There were at least a few hundred halls in the entire palace. But that kid is a bit strange. The middle-aged man with a gloomy expression said, "Let's continue chasing and observe the situation." The 5 of them nodded. When they discovered the ancient supreme grade pill bottle, most of them could not hold themselves back any longer. One by one, they rushed towards the second palace hall. Long Yu had already arrived at the second hall. He walked to the center of the hall and pretended to take the pill bottle from the stone platform. As a result, the 5 people who had caught up all shouted, "Stop!" If Long Yu had been doing something else, these 5 people would have been much more cautious. But seeing Long Yu take away the pill bottle, they didn't have time to think about it. With a loud shout, they charged over. One of them raised his hand and sealed off the entire hall, preventing Long Yu from escaping. Then, with a flash, he appeared beside Long Yu, and a spatial blade instantly slashed towards Long Yu. This person was a late-stage Emperor Realm cultivator, so Long Yu naturally didn't dare to fight him. He immediately used his 7th divine ability, the Path of 9 Underworlds, and passed through the sealed space. Then, he used Shadow Escape and left the palace. The others stepped into the hall successively. The middle-aged man at the advanced stage of the king realm grabbed the pill bottle that Long Yu had thrown away, and when he opened it, a strong medicinal fragrance instantly drifted out. It really is an ancient transcendent elixir. That person was overjoyed. However, in the next moment, several beams of white light flashed around the palace hall and enveloped him. After Long Yu left the second palace hall, he activated the elixir guarding array once again. 4 beams of white light appeared and instantly annihilated 4 Emperor Realm cultivators. The last one remaining was the most cautious late-stage Emperor Realm cultivator. The white light came too quickly. Even the divine characters of space couldn't allow the people inside to escape in time. The 4 people who had entered the palace were completely annihilated. Not even their bones remained. The most cautious late-stage Emperor Realm cultivator felt a lingering fear when he saw this. It was fortunate that he hadn't entered the palace with the others, or he would have been dead by now. He looked up and saw Long Yu staring greedily at the pill bottle that had fallen to the ground in the passageway on the other side of the hall. However, he didn't dare enter to take it. Although I don't know how this kid was so lucky to have avoided 2 rounds of white light, it's obvious that he wasn't the one controlling the white light. The late-stage Emperor Realm cultivator thought for a moment, then immediately turned around and left. There was no way he was going to risk his life in a place like this. He might die without knowing what was going on, so he decided to go out and call for help. As for Long Yu, he would leave an avatar behind to keep an eye on him and prevent Long Yu from escaping. When he passed by the first palace hall, he felt a lingering fear in his heart. He didn't dare step into the hall at all, so he immediately used the divine characters of space and teleported several hundred meters forward, returning to the first entrance. It's a good thing that I can teleport past these halls. The late-stage Emperor Realm cultivator was still fearful. He was truly afraid that his teleportation would attract the white light's attack. Thankfully, he managed to leave the palace without a hitch. He left behind a mirror avatar at the entrance of the palace hall and flew towards the entrance of the ancient ruins. He was going to leave the ruins and call for more people. With so many transcendent ancient rank pills around, he was sure that he could find a lot of people. Even if they were all Emperor Realm cultivators, it would be enough to sacrifice them. That's right. He was going out to find people to sacrifice in order to figure out the mechanism behind the appearance of the white light. He would only be able to obtain the pills if he could figure out the pattern behind the appearance of the white light. Otherwise, he wouldn't do something so stupid as to die before he could get his hands on the pills. That was why he wasn't interested even though there were 17 other entrances nearby. Instead, he left as quickly as he could. Long Yu smiled in satisfaction as he watched the man leave. Clearly, that fellow had gone out to call for reinforcements. Since he was going out to call for reinforcements, it was time to relax the entry requirements of the entire ancient ruins. The protective array of the pill hall and those white lights were definitely something that could easily annihilate even an Emperor Realm expert. In this place, even if Long Yu were to face an Emperor Realm expert, he wouldn't be afraid. Of course, the other party could use the divine characters of space to jump through the halls and deal with him first. However, Long Yu had already comprehended the 9 hell heavenly light to a transcendent level. He could block the use of any divine characters of space. Long Yu had already dug a trap and was just waiting for others to jump in. He didn't know how many people would come, but he would kill as many as they came. He couldn't let even one of them escape. The Shenluo Empire was an enemy to Long Yu, not a friend. Back in the city of Desolate God, the city lord's daughter, Situliuli, had tyrannically insisted on leaving one of Long Yu's arms behind. The two sides had already become enemies. Since this was the case, Long Yu wouldn't let go of the opportunity to weaken the other party's strength. Moreover, he might even be able to catch some unexpected big fish. If he wanted to relax the conditions to enter the ancient ruins, He had to enter the control core of the entire small world's wreckage. That place could only be controlled by using a seal. Long Yu had to go to that place to truly catch a big fish. Cultivate first. Long Yu cultivated in the storage palace. He began to comprehend the aura of the Dubhe-Chi channeling technique. His comprehension of this martial technique was getting closer and closer to the transformation realm. He wasn't in a hurry because the late Emperor Realm Cultivator would need at least a month to leave the small world. Therefore, Long Yu cultivated for more than half a month. 25 days later, he finally achieved a breakthrough in the Dubhe-Chi channeling technique. He was half a step into the transformation realm. He was only a little bit away from completely entering the transformation realm, but Long Yu couldn't continue cultivating now. He had to hurry to the control core of the small world first. It had already been 2 months since he had entered the fragment of the minor world. During these 2 months, only the 7 Emperor Realm experts had come knocking on his door. Long Yu found it strange. Could it be that only these 7 fellows had followed him in? Long Yu flew straight to the entrance and saw the late Emperor Realm Cultivator's mirror image from afar. A late Emperor Realm Cultivator's mirror image. Perhaps it was impossible for an ordinary intermediate stage King Realm Martial Cultivator to be a match for it. However, it was nothing to Long Yu. He transformed into a shadow and silently approached it. The mirror image clone had only just reacted when it was completely confined by the dark star body. 500 fallen dark stars condensed again and exploded with a loud bang. The late Emperor Realm mirror image couldn't put up any resistance at all. It was blasted into the purest divine characters and dispersed in all directions. Although the battle was taking place inside the palace, Long Yu wasn't worried about damaging it at all. As expected, the explosion of his 500 fallen dark stars didn't damage the palace in the slightest. It was easy to imagine how powerful a spatial crack that could split the entire palace in half was. Long Yu immediately formed a hand seal after the mirror image was dead and prepared to head to the control core of the small world through the spatial crack. He was going to let the great Emperor Realm Cultivator in. The late Emperor Realm Cultivator, who was about to reach the exit of the small world, paled when his mirror image was destroyed, but he didn't turn around. Instead, he flew even faster towards the exit. It would take him at least 25 days to return to the palace. There was no way he could find Long Yu by then. His best option now was to leave the small world and invite more reinforcements. He arrived at the exit of the ancient ruins a few days later, but the situation in front of him shocked him greatly. Emperor Realm experts had actually entered the ancient ruins and were gathering at the entrance. Up until now, there were already 10 Emperor Realm experts that had entered the ancient ruins together. Great emperors can enter now? The man was shocked. His late Emperor Realm cultivation didn't mean much at all. It was very likely that he would be used as cannon fodder in the palace. The one who would benefit in the end might not be him, but the great emperors. But so what? The fact that he was able to survive among the 7 meant that he was extremely cautious. Even great emperors might not survive as long as he did in the ancient ruins. After seeing the great emperors, the man immediately explained what he saw, including the dangers he encountered along the way. First, there was a relatively small spatial crack that swam around and sucked 2 of his teammates into it. They were torn to shreds by the power of space. Then, there was a giant spatial crack that cut across the entire ancient ruins. They could only go around it and rely on their powerful tracking skills to find Long Yu, who had entered first. They arrived at a magnificent palace. Inside the palace, there was a pill bottle in every hall. The pill bottle contained at least a supreme ancient rank pill. The man's words immediately piqued the great emperor's interest. When the Taiwu Empire's army arrives, we will immediately depart. Everyone, wait for further orders. Chapter 840. The Grand Martial Empire's late-stage Martial Emperor Realm Elder had already informed the Grand Martial Empire's army to prepare to head to the ancient ruins. It was definitely a team composed of many martial emperors, and their combat power was enough to sweep the entire Shenluo Empire. The elder had just entered the ancient ruins a day ago, and he had already sensed that there was something unusual about it. The aura in the ruins was much stronger than the ancient ruins he had entered before, and it was very likely that there would be some excellent things in the ruins. However, the Grand Martial Empire had not given up on the idea of capturing Long Yu. The Grand Martial Abyss's order was to explore the ancient ruins as much as possible while capturing Long Yu. In any case, capturing Long Yu was the main task. At this time, Long Yu had already strolled around the alchemy room in the ruins of the miniature world, and then went to some other places to search. After making sure that he had taken everything he could, he returned to the storage palace and waited patiently for the big fish to be caught. He believed that the big fish should have taken the bait by now. No matter who it was in the Shenluo Empire, as long as they came here and fell into Long Yu's trap, they would not be able to leave safely. Of course, Long Yu did not know that the Grand Martial Empire was involved in this matter, but even if he knew, he would not change his current plan, and would even clap his hands in glee. Compared to the Shenluo Empire, the Grand Martial Empire was a greater threat to Long Yu. It would be best if he could cut off a part of their power here. Then, Long Yu began to check the things he had obtained from other places. The control core of the ruins of the miniature world was a giant sphere, like a pitch-black fortress. Long Yu used the seal to enter it, and found that there was nothing but building materials inside. The Death Envoy had also said that the control core was not easy to find. In the entire ruins of the miniature world, the place with the most things was undoubtedly the storage palace that Long Yu had previously looted. Unfortunately, this palace had been cut into two by the spatial crack, and most of the things were gone. The situation was almost the same in other places. Long Yu rummaged through the alchemy room and found that many of the things in it had been destroyed, and he could not find any medicinal ingredients. Obviously, most of the medicinal ingredients had rotted over time. In the alchemy room, Long Yu first found 4 strange stone eggs. They were blue, red, black, and white. Long Yu didn't know what they were, so he put them away. To be able to survive for so many years, this thing must be extraordinary. Aside from that, Long Yu also found a few pill refinement materials similar to the ancient dragon elephant bones. Any of these materials, if taken to Shenwu world, wouldn't be any less valuable than the ancient dragon elephant bones. In fact, Long Yu even found a large piece of ancient dragon elephant bone, which was more than 10 times thicker than the one Long Yu had. If Long Yu's ancient dragon elephant bone was worth 10 million Shinbi, then this huge chunk of ancient dragon elephant bone was worth at least 100 million Shinbi. Of course, Long Yu naturally wouldn't sell these things. Wouldn't it be better to keep them for himself? Whether it's for refining weapons or pills, they were all top-notch materials that could be found in this world. After putting these things away, Long Yu went to the Void Warehouse. This Void Warehouse was made up of many black metal boxes that floated in the endless void. Each box was as big as a house, and they were all connected by black chains. Unfortunately, when Long Yu arrived at this Void Warehouse, he only saw a dozen black metal boxes, which clearly didn't match the Death Envoy's description. Long Yu observed and discovered that most of the chains on the dozen or so pitch-black metal boxes were broken. It was clear that there had been more pitch-black metal boxes here in the past, but unfortunately, there were only a few left. There aren't any spatial cracks around here. Why are most of the boxes missing? As soon as Long Yu saw this, he immediately thought that there might be other dangers in this broken world. For example, moving spatial cracks? He didn't dare to stay here for too long and directly took the dozen black metal boxes away, putting them into the Nether Dragon Blade's storage space. Although the Nether Dragon Blade's storage space wasn't as big as this broken world, it was more than enough to store these black metal boxes. As for what was inside, Long Yu didn't know, but he knew that it was very precious, so he'll just open it when he meets the Death Envoy. After the Void Warehouse, there were 2 other continents. There were a total of 3 continents in the entire broken world of the afflicted ones. This surprised Long Yu a lot, making him think that there might be more than 1 continent in Shinwu world as well. Long Yu didn't know about this, because even the 5 emperors couldn't leave the range of this Shinwu world continent. It's said that at the edge of Shinwu world, there's an endless sea of death aura. Anyone who enters it will die. Shinwu world, one of the 7 forbidden areas, is the whirlpool in the sky. The second of the 7 forbidden areas is the Sea of Death aura that surrounds the entire Shinwu world. At first, Long Yu didn't think too much about it, but now that he's arrived at the broken world of the afflicted ones, he couldn't help but think. I have the Geo Dragon Emperor's inheritance. Will I be able to go to the Sea of Death aura? If I leave Shinwu world and go through the Sea of Death aura, what kind of scene would it be? Will it be the same as this afflicted one's world, with endless space outside? Long Yu had a lot of questions in his mind. If he has the chance, he'll definitely go to the Sea of Death aura. The 3 continents in the small world of the sufferers had already ushered in the disaster of destruction. There were no living creatures on the 3 continents, only some ruins of buildings and skeletons of creatures, which seemed to express the original prosperity of this place, but now it had become complete ruins. Long Yu casually strolled around, but didn't go too deep into the 3 continents, because the Death Envoy didn't mention anything about treasures on these continents. He then returned to the Grand Palace where the pills were stored and began to check his harvest. There's a total of 100 pills that are at least archaic, a large piece of ancient dragon elephant bone, 4 different colored stone eggs, a total of 12 black metal boxes. Long Yu knows that the entire broken world has been destroyed, so it's already good enough that he was able to find these things. He can confirm that there won't be anything left in other places. His biggest goal this time, a pill that can recover his spirit, should be among the 100 pills. Unfortunately, Long Yu doesn't know which one it is, so he can only wait until he returns. After consuming that pill, Long Yu would be able to continue cultivating the Death Realm body refinement, allowing his fleshly body to become even more tyrannical. After returning to the Grand Palace, Long Yu randomly found a place and began to train. His Dubhe-chi drawing technique is already half a step into the transformation realm, but it still lacks an opportunity, which prevents him from completely stepping into the transformation realm. Now, no matter how much he trains, it's useless. Then he thought about it, and felt that it's about time, so he took out the gift given by the Saint Emperor's chief disciple, Qi Tianming, the Duankong Sacred Spring. He asked the Death Envoy, if he absorbed the power of the Duankong Sacred Spring, he can indeed be compatible with the Space Divine Rune, and directly comprehend a trace of the source-level space-tearing Divine Rune. This is an extremely powerful attack Divine Rune, but without a matching martial skill, it can't display too much power, so Long Yu has never been interested in it. The Death Envoy did say that if he has a chance to find the location of the Duankong Sacred Spring, he can extract the Duankong Sacred Spring for him, and once he obtains that super weapon, he will be able to grasp some martial skills related to the space-tearing Divine Rune. But before that, Long Yu comprehending the space-tearing Divine Rune won't be of much use. Regarding this, Long Yu can only chuckle. If nothing unexpected happens, the Duankong Sacred Spring is definitely under the Saint Emperor's control. If he wants to take the Death Envoy to break the seal of the Geo Dragon Emperor and obtain that super weapon, how can it be easy? As for now, Long Yu has nothing to cultivate, so he wants to take advantage of this idle time to absorb the power of the Duankong Sacred Spring and first fuse with the Space Divine Rune. Right now, Long Yu is fused with both the Shadow and Life attributes, and it is said that true experts can fuse with all 8 attributes of Divine Runes. For the time being, Long Yu doesn't have such high requirements, but having another Space Divine Rune is not bad either. After sitting down, he roughly estimated the time. Those Emperor Realm experts will arrive in 10 days at the earliest, so he has plenty of time to absorb the power of the Draconic sacred spring. When those Emperor Realm experts arrive, it will be time for Long Yu to reap his harvest. Who knows how many big fish he can catch? Long Yu is looking forward to it. With such a mentality, he began to absorb the power of the Draconic sacred spring. With the help of the Nether Dragon Blade, he can completely absorb the power of the Draconic sacred spring without leaving out a single bit. The Space Divine Rune began to nourish Long Yu's body, enveloping his meridians, bones, blood vessels, and acupuncture points in the Space Divine Rune. That small bottle of Draconic sacred spring, as Long Yu absorbed more and more, was completely absorbed in just a day. Then, Long Yu's entire body was bathed in the gentle Space Divine Rune, and his entire body began to fuse with it. The Draconic sacred spring can only be absorbed after stepping into the King Realm, otherwise it will be almost useless, because only after stepping into the King Realm will the World Seed explode and form an inner world, revealing a wisp of the aura of the 8 divine runes. The power of the Draconic sacred spring is just to strengthen a wisp of the Space Divine Rune's aura, allowing it to grow and fuse with the Space Divine Rune. There is nothing special about fusing with the Space Divine Rune, just like how Long Yu couldn't feel that he had fused with both the Shadow and Life attributes at the beginning. He felt that he had comprehended the space-cleaving Divine Rune, but when he tried using it, he found that its power was not even as great as the explosion of a fallen dark star. After all, he had just comprehended it, and his fusion with the Space Divine Rune was only at the first level, so it was normal that he couldn't display its full power. Chapter 841. When the Nether Void Dragon Blade shone brightly, Long Yu immediately felt the power of the Space Divine text within it, and his spirits rose. Long Yu knew that the battle weapon, the Nether Dragon Blade, had contained the power of Space Divine Runes from the very beginning. However, Long Yu hadn't fused with Space Divine Runes before, so he hadn't shown it. But now, as Long Yu fused with the Spatial Divine Runes, the power of the Spatial Divine Runes within the Nether Void Dragon Blade rushed out and into Long Yu's body. The space-tearing divine text was indeed not very useful to Long Yu, but the space divine text within the Nether Void Dragon Blade was different. It's also the power of the space divine text, and it's pouring into my body endlessly. I can't miss this opportunity. Long Yu's heart stirred, and he immediately began to comprehend the power of the spatial divine runes that were pouring into his body. This kind of source-grade spatial divine rune power, he was able to comprehend it without any difficulty. It was most likely because he was already compatible with the Nether Void Dragon Blade. I'll call you the Void Divine Text, Long Yu thought to himself. He knew that the greatest use of the Void Divine Text was to penetrate space, and that it was compatible with the Space Divine Text. After comprehending the Void Divine Text, the power of the Space Divine Text Long Yu used had increased by more than 10 times. In other words, he could now use the Merak Star Shadow Martial technique to teleport 10 times the distance of before. And this was just the beginning, and he had only comprehended 1% of the Void Divine Text. If he continued to comprehend the Void Divine Text, the effect would definitely be even more unimaginable. But now, the Void Divine Text within the Nether Void Dragon Blade was continuously pouring into Long Yu's body, causing his comprehension of the Origin Divine Text to continuously increase. Previously, Long Yu had cultivated the Merak step. Although he could teleport and break through space, he had actually only borrowed the power of the Merak stars and converted it into the power of the Void Divine Text. Now that Long Yu had directly comprehended the Void Divine Text, the effect was naturally greatly different. Not only did his teleportation distance increase by at least 10 times, it could even produce some special effect. Of course, Long Yu didn't know what this special effect was, but he was sure that it would greatly increase his actual combat strength. The Void Divine characters continued to surge into his body, and he continued to absorb them, increasing his understanding of them. This process continued for an entire 7 days. After those 7 days, the void divine markings finally stopped surging out from within the void dragon blade. Because in merely these 7 days, Long Yu had already comprehended 30% of the void divine markings. Long Yu sensed that the void nether dragon blade was still holding back. Perhaps it was because the two of them were only compatible with heaven's enlightenment. If they could be compatible with divine fusion, or even peerless, he would definitely be able to directly comprehend 100% of the void divine characters. Since he couldn't rush the compatibility with the battle weapon, Long Yu could only put it aside for now. He decided not to use the divine runic crystals to accelerate his comprehension of the void divine characters, because he would be able to automatically comprehend the void divine characters as long as he had a higher compatibility with the void nether dragon blade. Long Yu still had 170 divine runic crystals. He planned to accumulate more and directly comprehend the death divine characters to 100%. That way, the effects of his barrier of death and death realm body refining would be greatly improved. Next, Long Yu experimented with the void divine characters he had just comprehended. He casually used the Merak steps and teleported a short distance. He found that the consumption of teleportation energy was almost negligible, and the distance he could teleport had increased by 30 times, allowing him to cross a distance of 1,000 zhang with a single step. What made Long Yu the most pleasantly surprised was that when he used the Void Divine Rune to execute the Merak footwork, although this martial skill was not very compatible with the Origin Grade Divine Rune, it was still able to display some of the special effects of the Void Divine Rune. At the starting and ending point of his teleportation, 2 void vortexes would appear. These 2 void vortexes had a very strong suction force. According to Long Yu's preliminary estimation, the control of the suction force could actually be compared to half of the phantom spirals. When Long Yu used the phantom spiral, it would consume a considerable amount of the shadow attribute divine character's energy. But now, he only needed to teleport to create 2 void vortexes. If he teleported on the spot, the 2 void vortexes he created would overlap, and its control would be almost equal to the phantom spirals. In the end, it's just a 7th grade god chain. Long Yu shook his head. It seemed that when he returned this time, he had to learn some new god chains. Of course, if there was a pill that could allow him to break through to the 9th level of compatibility with the shadow attribute divine characters, he could skip the god chains and directly cultivate the god formation. It was definitely not easy to obtain the cultivation method of the god formation from the Death Envoy. However, Long Yu had already made arrangements in advance. At this time, the 12 strange beast lairs of the winged god race should have already been destroyed by the Red Emperor and his people, right? Then, the agreed 3 divine source stones, as Long Yu returned to the holy city of the 5 emperors, he would be able to obtain them. One of them would be used to exchange for the seal and other information in the wreckage of this small world. As for the other 2, Long Yu could use them to exchange with the Death Envoy for other things. Of course, this included the cultivation method of the god formation. Long Yu had only comprehended 30% of the void divine characters, but it already had such an effect. If he could comprehend 100% of it, or if there was a martial skill that was more compatible with this god formation, the effect would be even stronger. Long Yu could even imagine that if he was strong enough, strong to the extent of the Death Envoy when he was alive, perhaps he could casually teleport and create these spatial cracks that appeared in the wreckage of this small world. That incomparably powerful suction force, wasn't it similar to the characteristics of the void vortex? Of course, the void vortex created by Long Yu was far inferior to these spatial cracks. After mastering a new technique, of course, he had to familiarize himself with it. Long Yu put away the Netherworld Dragon Blade, and then used all his strength to display the Void Divine characters for 2 days, very quickly memorizing its characteristics. It was also at this time that Long Yu finally felt a faint fluctuation of power coming from the distant void. It was an extremely strong fluctuation of power, at least coming from a powerhouse of the Emperor realm. Long Yu knew that it was finally the final moment. He did not know how many powerhouses of the Emperor realm had been attracted. Long Yu began to prepare. He returned to the magnificent palace that stored the elixirs, and quietly waited for the others to arrive. He squatted behind the central entrance, facing the second palace hall. After another day, the powerhouses of the Emperor realm had finally approached. They had finally arrived in front of this magnificent palace. What astonished Long Yu was that when he looked over, he discovered that there were more than 10 Emperor realm experts that had entered the entrance and were rushing towards him. Dozens of Emperor realm powerhouses. Was this probably the entire Shenluo Empire? But very quickly, Long Yu discovered that something was wrong. This was because when the dozens of Emperor realm powerhouses entered the detection range of his Eye of Shadow, he quickly discovered that these Emperor realm powerhouses were all wearing familiar white robes. That's the symbol of the Taiwu Empire. The Taiwu Empire has actually sent people here. I didn't expect to catch such a big fish this time. Long Yu's eyes suddenly lit up. Not to mention the Emperor realm powerhouses of the Taiwu Empire, even if the 5 emperors came here and wanted to kill him, he would not be afraid. In this small cosmos wreckage, he who had mastered all kinds of seals was absolutely invincible. Of course, he had to make good use of it. He's right in front, go catch him. A total of 54 Emperor realm powerhouses barged into this entrance and directly charged towards Long Yu. Their imposing manner was simply shocking, something that Long Yu had never seen before. If this was any other place, Long Yu would definitely have raised his hands and surrendered. But here, Long Yu was not afraid at all. The figure of a Emperor realm powerhouse directly trampled through space and broke through the distance of more than 200 kilometers. He crossed the first and second palace halls and directly arrived in front of Long Yu. A large golden hand flickered with terrifying power as it grabbed towards Long Yu. The Emperor realm powerhouse's speed was extremely fast, and Long Yu almost did not react in time. Fortunately, he was already prepared for this. Almost instinctively, he dodged to the back and released the 9 underworld heavenly light. Not only that, Long Yu directly took out the ancient dragon skeleton pagoda and constructed a void domain, enveloping the entire entrance passage within it. Both sides engaged in battle without any unnecessary words, because such words were useless at this time. Within the 9 underworld heavenly light, the Emperor realm powerhouse's figure paused for a moment, but then the large golden hand immediately raised and completely dispersed the 9 underworld heavenly light. You're courting death. The Emperor realm powerhouse did not expect Long Yu to be able to obstruct his advance, and was instantly enraged. A total of 18 shadow chains shot out from his body and directly bound towards Long Yu. This was a binding mystique, and this person had already comprehended it to the 8th level. If he was hit by it, Long Yu definitely would not have any chance of escaping. Long Yu directly turned into a shadow and simultaneously formed 6 primordial shadows, which rushed towards the Emperor realm powerhouse at the same time. At the same time, the 6 primordial shadows continuously used the 9 underworld heavenly light. 6 of the shadow chains directly locked onto the 6 primordial shadows of Long Yu, and with a little force they were destroyed. However, because the 6 primordial shadows all used the 9 underworld heavenly light, the Emperor realm powerhouse was trapped for a breath of time. By the time the Emperor realm powerhouse waved his golden hand and dispersed the 9 underworld heavenly light, Long Yu had already retreated to the 3rd palace. A mighty Emperor realm powerhouse was actually being toyed with by a mere mid-stage King realm kid. This naturally enraged the Emperor realm powerhouse. However, before he could do anything, the other 3 Emperor realm powerhouses behind him caught up and overtook him, chasing after Long Yu at their fastest speed. Within the absolute space domain, Even these Emperor Realm powerhouses could not use the power of the Space Divine Runes, unless they could destroy the ancient Dragon Bone Tower. However, Long Yu had naturally hidden the ancient Dragon Bone Tower well. How could he allow them to destroy it? Right now, the ancient Dragon Skeleton Tower was only at the ancient grade. If it were to face an Emperor Realm expert head-on, it would definitely not be able to withstand it. To an Emperor Realm expert, destroying a top-grade ancient-grade combat weapon was not an impossible task, but it would still be extremely difficult. Regardless, there was no way Long Yu would risk the ancient Dragon Bone Tower. The 4 Emperor Realm powerhouses chased after Long Yu into the third palace. They did not really care that the Space Divine Runes were sealed, because this meant that Long Yu himself could not use the Space Divine Runes. Unfortunately, they had guessed wrong. Path of the 9 Underworld. Long Yu saw that the 4 had stepped into the third palace, and immediately used this mystique to break through space, leaving the palace with a Merak star shadow. Chapter 842. The 4 Great Emperors were the first to react when the 4 beams of white light appeared in the third palace. They had all heard the report from the late Emperor Realm Cultivator that a powerful white light would appear in the palace and annihilate all intruders. At the very least, a late Emperor Realm Cultivator would be instantly killed. They didn't know if the Great Emperors would be able to withstand it, but they all used their own defensive methods and divine runes to surround themselves in an attempt to resist the white light. Great Emperors were much stronger than Emperor Realm Cultivators, but they weren't instantly annihilated by the white light. However, it was obvious that they couldn't withstand it either. The 2 early-stage Great Emperors only managed to hold on for half a breath's worth of time before their faces paled. Their defensive barriers had been destroyed by the white light, and now it was their turn. Even with their Emperor Realm physique, they couldn't withstand a single attack from the white light. The white light was easily annihilated. The remaining 2 mid-stage and 1 late-stage Great Emperors didn't last long either. Half a breath's worth of time was all it took for them to perish in the third palace. The late-stage Emperor Realm expert held on for the longest time. He almost escaped from the range of the palace. But Long Yu saw this from afar. He raised his hand and used the Netherworld spiral runes to seal the expert, preventing him from escaping. Long Yu's lips curled into a smirk after killing 4 Great Emperors with a single-hand seal. Success. These were 4 Great Emperors from the Taiwu Empire, people who could call the wind and summon the rain. Their status in the Xun Wu world could only be described as noble. But now, they were completely annihilated by Long Yu. This scene caused the remaining 50 or so Great Emperor Realm cultivators to become more cautious and cautious. They still didn't know if the white light was under Long Yu's control. If it wasn't, then wasn't he a bit too lucky? Or could it be that he had already grasped the pattern of the white light's appearance? And that was exactly what they wanted. As long as they grasped the pattern of the white light's appearance, they would be able to ignore the white light and obtain all the pills and bottles in the palace. Obviously, they still didn't know that the pills in this palace had already been plundered clean by Long Yu. Now, they had merely barged into a trap that Long Yu had deliberately set up. Long Yu, take this. Suddenly, a female cultivator in the immortal Emperor realm shouted. A wave of bewitching divine runes landed on Long Yu's body. The power of the bewitching divine runes ignored the spatial seal and easily slammed into Long Yu. Long Yu's eyes instantly turned sluggish. He stared at the beautiful Emperor Realm female cultivator and momentarily lost his ability to think. Following which, the female cultivator stepped into the third hall, intending to cross the hall and grab Long Yu. The white light did not appear. The remaining emperors were overjoyed at this discovery. While Long Yu was being charmed, they would be able to pass through the palace without being enveloped by the white light. Instantly, the 7 Emperor Realm experts couldn't restrain themselves. After all, whoever captured Long Yu would be rewarded handsomely when they returned to the extreme martial abyss. These rewards were equivalent to 100 years of hard work for these Emperor Realm experts. None of them wanted to fall behind others, but as soon as the 7 of them stepped into the third palace, the white light appeared again. Long Yu came to his senses at this moment and immediately retreated. In just a short period of time, the 7 experts who had entered the third palace were once again killed by the white light. Only a late Emperor Realm expert with extremely strong defense managed to escape from the range of the white light. Surprisingly, he was still alive. The female emperor who flew over first arrived at an extremely close distance to Long Yu. Without a second thought, Long Yu turned around and threw out a boundless imprisonment. 12 dark stars stacked on top of each other and trapped the female emperor within. In a single breath, the female emperor broke through the boundless imprisonment and continued her pursuit, only to find that Long Yu was already near the fourth palace. After him. She gritted her teeth and chased after him as fast as she could. The entire passageway within the palace had been enveloped by the absolute space domain unleashed by the ancient dragon skeleton pagoda, making it impossible to use the power of the divine rune of space. However, Long Yu was able to use the path of 9 underworlds to directly traverse through space. It was precisely because of this that he had the opportunity to escape from the hands of a Soul Emperor. In the next moment, Long Yu stepped into the fourth palace. He couldn't care less about what happened to the others, because he was about to carry out an even more vicious plan. Seeing that the defensive late-stage Emperor couldn't be destroyed by the white light of the protective formation, Long Yu knew that the formation alone wouldn't be enough. Therefore, he needed to lure the enemy deeper in and use the suction force of the spatial fissure to deal with them. Long Yu didn't pay much attention to the female emperor who was chasing after him. He continued to retreat, and soon felt the suction force from the spatial fissure increasing his speed. The female emperor stepped into the fourth palace. Seeing that there was no white light, she heaved a sigh of relief. However, she didn't dare to stay in the palace. Instead, she flew towards Long Yu, wanting to grab him. From the looks of it, Long Yu was very clear about the pattern of the appearance of these white lights. If they could capture Long Yu and threaten him with his life, they would be able to obtain the pattern of the appearance of these white lights. In that case, each of them would be able to obtain at least 2 ancient transcendent grade pills. One had to know that the celestial demon pill was only a supreme ancient rank pill. Even a demon emperor would treat it as a treasure. This showed just how precious it was, and Long Yu had 99 ancient rank pills on him right now. If he wanted to consume them, he'd have to wait until he returned to see the envoy of death. For now, he needed to focus on dealing with the pursuing great emperors. The fifth palace. Long Yu quickly entered the fifth palace and passed through it, allowing the suction force of the spatial fissure to suck him away. The female emperor who was in the passageway between the fourth and fifth palaces felt the suction force of the spatial fissure, but she was able to withstand it. Catch him. The 40 or so people behind her followed and passed through the fourth palace. They felt the suction force from the spatial fissure, but didn't think too much about it. They were great emperors, so they could resist the suction force. As for Long Yu, they absolutely couldn't let him go. Otherwise, all of them would punish the Taiwu abyss heavily. As they got closer and closer to the seventh palace hall, the suction force of the spatial crack had already increased by 4 times. The speed at which Long Yu was being sucked away became faster and faster. Before long, he was completely sucked out of the front of the palace hall and into the void outside the ruins. The great emperors chasing after him were confident that they could resist the suction force of the spatial fissure due to their higher realm of martial Tao and the fact that they could resist the suction force of the spatial fissure. They discovered that the absolute space domain that Long Yu had set up was useless after leaving the ruins of the palace. This made them even more relieved. As long as they could use the power of the divine runes, how could the suction force from the spatial fissure be a hindrance to them? Little brat, stop right there. Are you tired of living? If you go any further, even we won't be able to save you. One of the great emperors with strong defense shouted in an attempt to change Long Yu's mind. "We're catching you, not killing you. Why are you running? If you continue to run, only death awaits you. Save me, hurry and save me." Long Yu pretended to be at a loss of what to do. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws as he struggled, but discovered that he was unable to resist the powerful suction force of the spatial crack. The great emperors were once again fooled by Long Yu's acting. "Wait for me to catch him." One of the skinny late-stage great emperors who comprehended the divine runes had an evil glint in his eyes. His figure flickered as he tried to teleport to Long Yu's side. But when he did, he was shocked by what he saw. He clearly wanted to teleport to Long Yu's side. Why was he only able to teleport half the distance? It's spatial suppression. The closer we get to the spatial fissure, the stronger the spatial suppression becomes. The effect of the divine runes is weakened. Someone from the back warned, "Hurry and catch him. If we get any closer, we won't be able to escape." The skinny young man with an evil glint in his eyes nodded. He knew that he had to act quickly. With a flicker, he closed the distance between him and Long Yu. With another flicker, he closed the distance again. He soon discovered that the distance he could teleport with the divine runes was getting shorter and shorter. He couldn't even get close to Long Yu. Explode! The skinny youth's eyes flashed with madness as he swallowed a supreme desolate-grade pill. The pill took effect and instantly increased the strength of the divine runes on his body by 3 times. In the next instant, his figure flashed once more. This time, he finally arrived at Long Yu's side. However, he discovered that at this position, the suction force of the spatial crack had become extremely strong. In fact, it had already completely suppressed the spatial divine characters. Near the spatial fissure, all divine runes couldn't be used. In other words, even a great emperor would have to expend all of his energy to escape the suction force of the spatial fissure. Therefore, no one thought that Long Yu would have a way to escape. They caught up with great speed, but they didn't know that this was all a ploy by Long Yu to lure the enemy in. "Great, you've come to my side. But are you sure you can leave this place?" Long Yu smiled as he watched the skinny youth arrive next to him. With a wave of his hand, he condensed a small ball of 9 underworld heavenly light and enveloped himself within it. This allowed Long Yu to resist the terrifying suction force from the spatial fissure. Because the 9 underworld heavenly light sealed the power of the divine runes, the suction force from the spatial fissure was naturally a derivative of the divine runes. It was by relying on this move that Long Yu was able to take away all the pills in the palace. The reason he lured the enemy in was because he wanted to use the spatial fissure to kill these great emperors. As for himself, he already had a way to escape. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.